Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of Monday, August 14th, 2023. I now call the meeting to order. And I will ask Commissioner Rojas to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. If you'd please stand.
I'm sorry, Chair Arith, you still have to adjourn the closed session.
Oh, goodness. Okay. I adjourn the closed session. Okay.
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Rojas. Procedurally, is there anything else we need to do, Mr. Preziosi?
Yes, I will give the closed session report.
Okay, great. Go for it.
Thank you. At approximately 5 p.m., the city's planning commission recessed into closed session. There was one item on the closed session agenda. That was anticipation of litigation, one case. The city council recessed to closed session. They recessed out of closed session a little after 6 p.m. And the planning commission took no reportable action when it was in closed session.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Preziosi. All right, Anna, roll call, please.
Just give me one moment, I have to switch over on the computer.
Sure thing.
Chair Arith,
Present.
Vice Chair Toller.
Here.
Commissioner Rojas,
Present.
Commissioner Zick,
Here.
Commissioner Andrade,
Here.
Commissioner Vivar,
Present.
Commissioner Klepek.
Present.
All right, thank you, Anna. We have no announcements or presentations, which brings us to public comments. These are for matters that are not listed on tonight's agenda, so if you'd like to speak to that, please come to one or the other podium. You'll have 3 minutes, and you'll hear a chime at the 1-minute mark. Ms. Simo, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm going to be here about Gym 12 at 140 East 17th Street. For the past 3 weeks, they just leave their door open all night during all their workouts. You can hear the instructors singing, screaming, counting down, just anything the gym wants. But I did get the reports from our code enforcement. And did you guys know that Gym 12 has skylights? Skylights on top of the room that they work out in, probably? You know, skylights don't really keep bass in very well, do they? I mean, not very well at all. So let's go over the report. So this is the Gym 12 surveillance timeline, okay? So I'm gonna be looking at November, what was it? November 22nd, I thought it was, and it's not on there, go figure. But anyways, every time they go out there, they can hear the bass. They say that it's not very audible. The decibel levels are between the mid 40s to 50 range, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, our decibel range in our community is in the upper 20s to lower 30s range. And I also want to bring up the fact that they use a handheld one, so you can't actually see the bass marks that we have to hear, you know, because it goes from like 30 to 45, you know, boom, 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 back and forth, you know. And I also wanted to bring up that in the timeline, it says that they went out there and it says that they, we were able to speak with 6 of the spaces on that day and received 4 phone calls later. But on their screw you letter, they said that they talked to like 20-something people, 28 people, wasn't it? So the 6 and 4 makes 10. You know, I'm really good in math, and that doesn't make 28 people. So I wanted to know why, you know, that cross-reference wasn't very well. But in the report, I want to bring up once again that they did hear bass every time they were out there. And usually if a gym doesn't want to get fined, they lower the bass whenever they see cops or code enforcement. But if we can do something about them shutting the doors so that we don't have to physically hear them on the intercom all night long, from I get home around 4 till 8 o'clock at night, just screaming sometimes, especially whenever we get around 7:30, just full on screaming. And it's a little ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. And even on the petitions, they might not have agreed, with it completely, but they all say that they hear the bass. All of them do. And one lady says she calls the cops hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. I mean, are we ever going to resolve this? Maybe make a building that has skylights not be able to have a gym? Yeah, because that's not going to keep your base in at all. And having the door open, it's not going to help either. Have a great night.
Thank you, Ms. Smo. Does anyone else in chambers wish to speak on any item that is not listed on tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none. Anna, do we have anyone on Zoom or telephone?
No, we do not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. I will now close public comments, and we will turn to planning commissioner comments and suggestions, starting with Commissioner Rojas.
I have none. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Zick.
Nothing tonight.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Andrade? All right. Commissioner Vivar?
Yeah, just wanted to thank members of the committee that are here tonight at the meeting. Appreciate your attendance. And I also want to give a shout out to our city engineers. I recently, a couple months ago, and I meant to say to the last meeting, LPI's lead pedestrian intervals at more intersections, especially, let's see, there was Harbor and Victoria, I saw that. Up and down 19th Street, definitely. So great work on that, making sure that we're working towards making our streets and intersections more safer for pedestrians. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair? Nothing? Commissioner Klepak?
I just wanted to thank everybody for the very warm welcome, both from my fellow commissioners and from staff, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. That's it.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and wrap it up in saying that we are extremely excited to have you, Commissioner Klepak. We've been anticipating your arrival, and we're really hoping that you've settled in okay, and we welcome you to this board and really look forward to the contributions you're going to make. So thank you for joining us and being a part of the city. So thank you. And lastly, I'd like to thank the public again for giving us a few extra minutes as we came out of closed session today. So thanks for being patient with us. And I know Anna tells some pretty good jokes, so hopefully she was telling some of them to you. Okay. All right. So this brings us to our consent calendar. I see we have 2 consent calendar items tonight. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the Planning Commission staff or the public request specific items to be discussed or removed from the consent calendar for discussion. Items removed from the consent calendar will be discussed and voted upon immediately following the Planning Commission action on the remainder of the consent calendar. Let's see, Anna, would you like to read those into the record, please? Or I can say them just the same.
December 12th, 2022 unofficial meeting minutes. April 24th, 2023 unofficial meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Commissioners, do you have any comments on the minutes? All right, seeing none, I don't either. May I have a motion? Motion by Toller. What is your motion, Vice Chair?
I move that the commission approve the consent calendar.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Vivar. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
No comments, sir.
Okay.
No.
All right. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, let's bring it up for the vote.
That motion carries 7-0.
All right, thank you, Anna. This brings us to our public hearings. We have 3 public hearing items tonight. And Anna, if you would, please read the title for public hearing item number 1.
Public hearing item number 1, planning application 22-12 for a conditional use permit to operate a retail cannabis storefront business with delivery and a minor conditional use permit for compact parking located at 141 East 16th Street, the Mercantile. Please note we have received public comments on this item that have been provided to the commission and made a part of the record.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Does staff need to comment on anything here?
Good evening, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the Commission, and welcome Commissioner Claypack. This was reviewed initially on July 24th by the Planning Commission, and it was continued. And the applicant's legal counsel has since sent the staff a letter requesting that the item be once more removed from the agenda.
Okay.
So if and when it does reappear on the agenda, it'll be noticed, and it'll be agendized in the normal routine fashion where the neighbors receive noticing and any other requirements by the code.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Does anyone have any questions of staff? All right. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion. Motion made by Vice Chair Toller. What's your motion?
Let's see, help me out here. Okay. I move that Planning Commission remove the CUP application from the meeting tonight.
Okay. Also, I think there's something that might follow there, Vice Chair.
I'd put in the motion that it be renoticed properly if and when it comes back.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could add some potential language, you could have a motion to continue the matter to a date uncertain at a to-be-determined date.
Okay. I move that the Planning Commission remove the CUP application from tonight's agenda, be continued to a determined date, and be noticed then. Renoticed then.
All right. Is that sufficient, City Attorney Preziosi?
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Vivar. Do you wish to speak to your item, Commissioner?
No.
All right.
No.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none. Anna, you can bring it up. Thank you.
That motion carries 7-0.
All right. Thank you, Anna. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. Otherwise, we will do this at a future date. If we could, please read the title for public hearing item number 2.
Public hearing item number 2, planning application 23-04 for a conditional use permit to allow a tattoo and body piercing body art establishment at 1834 Newport Boulevard, Units C and D. Please note we have not received public comments on this item. This is a call for any ex parte communications.
All right. Thank you, Anna. Start to my right, Commissioner Rojas. Any ex parte?
I have none.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Zick. Commissioner Andrade? Vice Chair?
Nope.
Commissioner Vivar?
Nope.
Commissioner Klepak?
None.
All right, I have none to report either. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Mr. Villalobos to present the item. Mr. Villalobos.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Gabriel Villalobos. I am an Assistant Planner with the Development Services Department, and tonight I'll be presenting Planning Application 23-04, which is a conditional use permit request for a new tattoo establishment to be located at 1834 Newport Boulevard. The project site is located at 1834 Newport Boulevard, specifically within Unit C and D, which were once separate tenant spaces but have now been combined into one space. This is where the applicants named Cleopatra Inc. Shall have their proposed new tattoo establishment. The project location is composed of one parcel, which contains a roughly 3,400 square foot existing commercial building with multiple tenants, including a barbershop, esthetician, and beauty salon. The subject property contains 0 lot line setbacks on the front and sides of the property, with the building sharing walls with the properties to the north and south of it. There is no parking on site, with the rear of the property occupied by a private patio. All parking serving this building, as well as the adjacent businesses, are located at the rear of the property across an existing alleyway and within a city-owned public parking lot. The subject property is Zone C2, otherwise known as the General Business District, which allows for a wide range of goods and services, including a tattoo shop, subject to the approval of conditional use permit. The property is surrounded by similarly zoned parcels to the north and south, with some multifamily residential zone properties located to the east and planned development commercial properties to the west. The project site is not located within a specific plan or overlay area. Surrounding uses include commercial retail to the north, south, and west, including the Triangle Square development directly across the street and the Goat Hill Tavern directly next door to the proposed site. The multifamily residential land uses are buffered from the project site by the previously mentioned alleyway and city-owned parking lots. The slide above shows some photos taken from the site showing the current conditions. Photo number 1 shows the front entrance of the building facing Newport Boulevard. Photo 2 shows the rear of the building and the alleyway that separates the project location from the parking lot. Photo 3 shows a pathway leading from the rear parking area into the building where the proposed tattoo establishment would be located. And photo number 4 shows the current condition of the interior of the space to be occupied. The proposed project is a request for a conditional use permit for the proposed use as required through section 13-30 of the Costa Mesa Municipal Code. The proposed business, named Cleopatra Inc., is a global brand with 90 stores worldwide and 5 locations, both existing and proposed, in the United States. The applicants are an established company and are looking to expand into Orange County with the opening of their next location within this 1,300 square foot commercial space. The applicants will provide both tattooing and piercing services on an appointment-only basis from the hours of 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. There will be no walk-ins accepted at this location, and each appointment will be pre-scheduled via the applicant's website or over the phone. Per the applicant letter attached to the staff report, there will be 3 employees on site at any time, including 2 tattoo artists and 1 designer. The applicants have indicated that piercing will only be a small component of their business, and as such would not require a full-time employee. As such, an occasional piercer will also work on site part-time as needed. The scope of work for this project includes interior improvements made to the tenant space and will not include the expansion of any square footage or propose any changes to the exterior of the building. Shown here is a site plan for the project site. As previously mentioned, the site is composed of 1 existing 2-story commercial building that has 0 lot line setbacks on the front and sides of the property. As shown on the slide above, the building shares walls with the adjacent properties, including Goat Hill Tavern at 1832 Newport Boulevard and Coast Jewelry and Loan at 1836 Newport Boulevard. The project site consists of the existing commercial tenant spaces as well as a building facade facing Newport Boulevard. The rear portion of the building also includes an enclosed patio area and abuts a public alleyway that separates the project site from the previously mentioned city-owned parking lot. Because the site was previously occupied by commercial retail land uses, and because the new land use falls under that commercial retail category, there's no requirement for additional parking on site, and as such, the parking, in addition to the existing development, remains legal nonconforming. Shown here is the floor plan layout for the proposed tattoo establishment. The proposed layout will include 5 working stations for the tattoo artists, a reception desk located at the front entrance of the establishment, a small restroom, and seating for a lounge area, as well as space for design work. All proposed uses to take place through this application shall occur within this licensed area, completely under roof. Project-specific conditions of approval have been added to this application to address some potential concerns that may result from the approval of the application. These conditions include adhering to both state and local regulations regarding the sterilization of the body art facility and equipment used, as well as other best practices, including the submittal of an infection control plan and implementation of blood-borne pathogen exposure control training for the licensed artists working at the facility. In addition, there's also the need to obtain necessary body art facility permits from the county's Environmental Health Division, as well as any other additional required licenses. We will also limit the clientele to appointments only with no walk-ins and a maximum of 2 clients scheduled at the same time to limit traffic to the site. Hours will also be limited to no later than 10 p.m. to limit noise and other potential impacts to the sensitive uses located in the vicinity. And lastly, we will require the posting of licenses and permits on site to show compliance with local regulations. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA per CEQA guidelines section 15301 existing facilities and approve planning application 23-04 subject to the conditions of approval. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Villalobos. I appreciate it. Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff on this item? Commissioner Zick.
Thank you, Mr. Villalobos. Just a real simple question. I'm looking at attachment 2 in our package, and I'm sure this is just semantics, but I want to be clear. It said that the tattoo studio is located at 1834. I'm assuming that should say it will be located at that address unless they're currently there operating.
Yeah, that's correct. There's currently, the subject site is currently vacant, and only after the approval of the conditional use permit will they be allowed to operate at that specific location.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, anyone else?
A quick question as well.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Villalobos, as well. So regarding the condition that only allows 2 customers at this facility at once, was that an applicant proposed condition, self-imposed condition, or was this city staff's recommendation?
So that was actually self-imposed by the applicants. Per the attached applicant letter, they do indicate that, generally speaking, they tend to schedule only 2 clients at any given point, and that's to limit the number of appointments they have on a daily basis. So their plan going into it is to only have the 2 employees and to limit the number of clientele at any given point to just 2 on site.
All right, that was my only question. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Anyone else? All right, I don't have any questions either, so thank you, Mr. Villalobos. We'll now open the public hearing on this item and ask the applicant's representative to come up, if they're here. Do we have the applicant here? Yes, sir. If you'd come up to either podium, I appreciate it. If you would, sir, please state your name and let us know if you've read the staff report and the conditions of approval and if you agree to them.
Hi, my name is Vugar Bahmanzadeh. Yes, I listened to all the you are said and I approve that.
And you agree to the conditions of approval?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. The floor is yours if you'd like to make a presentation, sir.
Oh, no, I'm just here.
Okay, in that case, we'll move on to commissioner questions. Does anyone have any questions of the applicant? No? All right, well, that's really easy. Thank you. Appreciate it. You're welcome to take a seat for the time being. I will now open up for public comments. If you'd like to speak in this item, please come to either podium. Seeing no one in chambers. Anna, do we have anyone on Zoom or telephone?
No, we do not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, moving along. I'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of the public hearing. Ask commissioners, do you have any further or any questions of the applicant, rather? All right, seeing Commissioner Vivar, are you? Okay, all right. And ask the applicant, sir, do you have any other comments or anything you'd like to say? Okay, sure. Commissioners, do you have any further questions of staff? All right, seeing none. We'll now close the public hearing and entertain a motion, please. Motion made by Commissioner Vivar. What's your motion, Commissioner?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve planning application PA 23-04 and find that the application is exempt under CEQA requirements for new building or existing building not going through any change of.
Is that existing facilities 15301?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. And I believe application 23-04 subject to conditions of approval?
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there a second? seconded by Toller. Would you like to speak to your motion, Commissioner?
No, I just think that it's interesting that a worldwide business that only has 5 locations in the U.S. is opening up one up in Costa Mesa, of all places. So I think that's kind of exciting, and great that we're going to have this use coming in, taking up 2 empty units that are there, and I do believe that this application does meet all the requirements in findings we need to make regarding being substantially compatible with the surrounding developments and is not injurious to the public health, welfare, safety, and I'm excited to see this new business coming to Costa Mesa. That's it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Vice Chair Toller, you wish to speak?
No comments, just good luck to the applicant.
All right, thank you. Anyone else on the commission wish to speak to this? All right, seeing none, I think I'll go ahead and make a last comment in saying that we appreciate that you'd like to open your business here in Costa Mesa. Hopefully it's a good one. I'll be supporting the motion this evening. And I think opening up next to the Goat Hill Tavern is probably a pretty wise one. It was my favorite place to go as in my younger years. So anyway, I know it well. All right, thank you. With that said, Anna, if we could pull up the vote, please.
That motion carries 7-0.
All right, thank you very much. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. Good luck. All right, thank you. All right, I think we're moving along, so let's go ahead and get into public hearing item number 3 unless anyone needs to break. No? All right, let's go for it. Anna, if you'd please read the title for item number 3, please.
Public hearing item number 3. Planning application 22-05 for a conditional use permit to operate a retail cannabis storefront business with delivery located at 1505 Mesa Verde Drive East, C21+. Please note we have received public comments on this item that have been provided to the commission and made a part of the record. This is a call for any ex parte communications.
All right, thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. Starting to my right, Commissioner Rojas, any ex parte?
I have none.
Commissioner Zick?
Yes. In response to the public comment we received, I reached out or attempted to reach out to Bev Farley to understand more details about this pamphlet she received in the mail, which confused her regarding the status of the business and its application, but didn't hear back from her.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Andrade?
Yes, I spoke to the massage business that's in at this location.
Okay, all right, thank you. Vice Chair?
No, nothing to report.
All right, Commissioner Vivar?
Yeah, I had conversations with the tenants, existing tenants of the business, as well as a phone call today with the building owner / landlord.
Okay. For clarification, did you talk to all of the existing businesses on
yes.
site or just a couple?
Yes, site visits. Well, a combination of site visits, in-person conversations, as well as phone calls, and just a phone call with the building owner, landlord.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Klepak, any ex parte?
For me.
Okay, great. I have a couple to report. I took the initiative to call the Azalon building and talk to one of their representatives, Lisa, I believe was her name, just to get some clarification on the setup of Azalon and what it has in terms of amenities on site. I also received an email from a Betsy Densmore, and I wanted to acknowledge that, though I did not respond to that email. So with that said, I will now turn it over to Ms. Halligan to present the item. Ms. Halligan.
Good evening, Chair Arith and Commissioners. I'm Michelle Halligan, Contract Planner with the Economic and Development Services Department. Planning Application 22-05 is a request for a conditional use permit to establish a cannabis storefront with delivery at 1505 Mesa Verde Drive East. The proposed business would be known as C21 Plus. The city has approved 21 CUPs for cannabis storefronts. The approved CUPs are shown here in green. The project being presented tonight is outlined in blue. To date, there are 7 operating cannabis storefronts in Costa Mesa. The city has also approved CUPs for 2 delivery-only cannabis businesses. One will be located on Harbor Boulevard, and the other is located in North Costa Mesa in the Measure X green zone. There are several steps in the cannabis permitting process. If the CUP is approved tonight, the applicant would next finalize the plans based on conditions of approval, apply for building permits, pass inspections, and then obtain a cannabis business permit and business license. The proposed storefront would be located at 1505 Mesa Verde Drive East, as shown in the aerial and zoning map. The subject property is zoned C1, Local Business District. There are other commercially zoned properties to the north, south, east, and west. The property to the north is commercially zoned, however, it was developed as an age-restricted apartment community. Here are some photos of the existing conditions. Development on the property consists of an approximately 6,000 square foot, single-story, multi-tenant building. As proposed, the storefront would occupy the entire building. Parking is provided in 2 surface parking lots. The site does not currently feature any landscaping. This is the conceptual site plan. The applicant proposes to bring the building up to current building codes and update the building facade with new siding and paint. Landscaping planters would be added along parking stalls in the front as well as the rear parking lot. As proposed and conditioned, the landscaping would include at least 4 24-inch box-sized trees, a variety of drought-tolerant shrubs, and living ground cover. A bike rack would be added to encourage multimodal transportation. The parking lots would be restriped to comply with the City of Costa Mesa's design standards and add 2 electric vehicle charging stations. A new trash enclosure would be required. Security lighting and surveillance cameras would also be installed. A preliminary photometric study was provided and would be further reviewed during the building plan check process as conditioned. This is a rendering of the proposed storefront as viewed from Mesa Verde Drive East. The proposed floor plan would combine 4 tenant spaces into 1 storefront. Demising walls would be added to create employee-only areas, such as offices, a break room, delivery space, and storage, shown in red. Customers would only be allowed in the entry and sales floor, as shown in green. A greeter employee would verify the customer's identity and age before allowing them to enter the sales floor. After their transaction is completed, customers must leave through the front door. All other areas of the premises would be accessible only to employees with proper security credentials. Employees could enter and exit through the main entrance or through a limited access door on the west side of the building. Vendors would park in a designated loading area by the entrance. As proposed and conditioned, all exterior doors, product path of travel, and the loading area would be under camera surveillance at all times. The applicant provided a detailed business plan that was evaluated by the city's cannabis consultant. It is not attached to the staff report because it contains proprietary details. The business plan describes the operator's professional experience, proof of capitalization, and proposed day-to-day operations, such as how they will track and trace their inventory. The applicant also provided a professionally prepared security plan that was reviewed by Costa Mesa's cannabis consultant. They determined that appropriate security measures were included to address local and state requirements. There are more than 45 standard conditions of approval related to cannabis retail uses. For example, cannabis consumption is prohibited on site, the facility is subject to state and local inspections, and a security guard must be present 24 hours a day. As with other cannabis storefronts that are near residential development, in Costa Mesa, there are specific conditions of approval proposed to ensure compatibility between the storefront and residences located across Mesa Verde Drive East. These include posting signs in the parking lot to remind customers to use consideration, limiting the hours the exterior trash enclosure can be used, and requiring employees to monitor the parking lot. Additionally, the applicant proposes to reduce their hours of operation. As proposed and conditioned, operations would be limited to the hours between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., Monday through Thursday, and 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., Friday through Sunday. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find the project categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act per CEQA Guidelines Section 15301, Class 1, Existing Facilities, and approve Planning Application 22-05, subject to conditions of approval. One of the owners of the proposed business, Hazelina Belladora, has prepared a presentation for the Commission tonight. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to answer your questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Halligan. Commissioners, questions of staff, starting with Commissioner Zick.
Thank you, Ms. Halligan. I'm curious, when I look at the floor plan, the main entrance is facing Mesa Verde East, yet the vast majority of parking is behind the building, as it is today. Did you have any discussion with the applicant about why their entrance was so far away from the parking?
Commissioner Zick, I don't recall having a conversation with the applicant about their selection and keeping the entrance along Mesa Verde Drive East.
Okay, thank you. And then on page 3 of the staff report, there's an indication that there are, and it's the second paragraph on the bottom, improvements will be made to the structure to bring the structure into compliance with current building and safety codes. I was curious what those improvements were, and I was looking at page 8, and I wasn't sure if any of those were the ones you were referring to.
Commissioner Zick, the building has not been upgraded in quite some time, and so now that the city's using the 2022 building codes, any improvements would be subject to those new codes. So for example, there would be changes to accessibility, different ventilation systems, and they would go through that plan check process with our building division.
So the ventilation system is going to be revamped?
That is in the proposed plan, but they haven't done the full specs because at this point we don't have an approved project.
Okay, and are there structural modifications that are anticipated, or was the word structure just a generic term?
The word structure is a generic term referring to the building as a whole, but they would need to remove various walls to comply with creating one tenant space.
Right. Interior demising walls, not structural walls.
That is correct.
So then my next question has to do with where do I see it? This school that was located nearby. Oh yeah, okay, page 7 of the staff report. This school, which is terminating its operations in August, so in a couple of weeks. Were they operating under a CUP? Did they need a CUP for their business?
Commissioner Zick, the County of Orange was operating their college and career academy from a location next door. When staff did a review of sensitive uses, this use was not identified because they had listed their address with the state as being located in the city of Santa Ana. So when we first noticed this item back in May, we received a letter from the County of Orange about this facility. And we did do some research. We found that they were operating without a CUP or a minor conditional use permit because it was more of an online learning model for students that were coming back to finish their degrees around, ages 18 to 25.
Okay, I just want to make sure they weren't leaving behind an active CUP.
Oh, no.
Okay, and then my last question, I'm referring to C21 Plus's package near the back, and on page 5, it refers to a procedure, and I'll ask them this question also, especially if you don't have the answer, referring to transcranial magnetic stimulation affecting nerve cells in the brain. Is this a procedure that staff has any knowledge of relative to any licensing or safety requirements?
Commissioner Zick, I'm not familiar with this procedure, but I believe they're describing what the cannabis products can do to someone's body. But the applicant is available to be more specific.
Yeah, I suspected that as well. Okay, thank you, that's it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Zick. Anyone else? Commissioner Bavar.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Ms. Halligan. I wanted to start off by pointing out something that I read in the transportation section of this regarding restricting the egress to right turn only. I think that was a good idea in terms of the safety along that busy street. So I just want to give a shout out to whoever decided that. Secondly, there was a section in that same transportation paragraphs about staff having gone around to the 7 currently operating retail cannabis establishments in the city. And the statement says, in effect, that the cannabis establishments were generally similar to other retail operations in terms of the traffic. So I'm curious about that statement because retail can obviously range from a mattress shop that nobody goes into to, gosh, I don't know, a boba shop that, would have a lot more foot traffic and vehicle traffic. So does this statement say that on average, it seems that their traffic patterns seem to be dotted around as would different types of retail uses, or would they fall more in the middle or more towards the lower end or higher end of retail type uses?
Commissioner Vivar, staff's been observing the open facilities at various times to try to get an understanding of if there are any ongoing parking issues or crowding or queuing onto the streets. And so far, we've not observed any issues with parking and circulation. I have seen that, the lunch hour can be a little bit busier, and then of course around 5:30, 6 o'clock. But in general, it seems like there's parking available at all of our facilities. We do try to go at various times and try to get just a general idea of what's happening at the storefronts that are open.
Okay.
Yeah, if you, Commissioner Ravar,
Sure.
if you don't mind, I'll follow up on that. I felt like when I was reviewing the report that Ms. Halligan prepared, and it did mention what we previously have been including in the report with regards to different new uses have different parking demand requirements, and because this is new use, we would be requiring a certain condition that said that we can still go back and require other mitigations if parking or traffic becomes an issue. And that condition obviously still remains, but I just felt like from a perspective of the last 9 months and the work that staff has done reviewing some of these projects and just keeping our eye on them, that it would be more informative if staff provided this little note basically is suggesting that we have been looking around, we've been keeping our eyes open, and really what our point was is that not to specifically hone into one type of retail use, but more that this use is acting like, in a lot of situations, these proposals are included in existing retail centers, although some have some unique operations where they only share one, they don't share a parking lot. Especially during the ones where they're retail centers, we've been noticing no real change in the parking demand based on the center activity that we've noticed before.
Okay. All right. Yeah, great. So regarding the section of the staff report that mentions the zone that this is in, which is the local business district. So I understand from the text of that paragraph that these zones are to be understood citywide in terms of providing a wide range of goods and services citywide. And so I'm just wondering, citywide, how many or what maybe percentage or ratio of the 21 approved cannabis storefronts are located in local business districts?
Commissioner Vivar, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but that's something that staff could research and come back to you.
Right, and I guess the reason I wonder this aloud is how many of these, assuming these all 21 become operational past the 7 that are currently up and running, how many of these would, I guess, actually be providing or be used by the local residents rather than people coming in from other cities or regional traffic generating uses? And then my last question is regarding the section of the staff report that mentions the sensitive uses, and the paragraph ends with a statement that the proposed cannabis establishment is basically meets all the requirements in terms of separation to sensitive uses. But then immediately following that is a paragraph that talks about the Orange County Department of Education facility, and then mentions that staff has added condition number 8, which basically states that the city wouldn't go through with a like moving this application forward only until that OCDE facility ceased operations. So I'm just wondering why if this proposed retail cannabis establishment meets the separation requirements, why then do we need condition number 8?
Commissioner Vivar, the condition of approval was just to specify that we wouldn't issue a cannabis business permit until that facility was removed. The county has assured us that that use will no longer be there by the end of this month, but in the event that something changes, we wanted to have that condition of approval available to us.
If I may follow up, Commissioner Vivar, just to be clear, when we were initially reviewing the application, we stalled the review. When we found out about the operations of the Orange County district there, we did look into it. We looked into some of the details of how the school, how the educational program functioned, what students it served, how it served it, and basically really got a good background on what the operations were, and informed the applicant that said that we have a concern with this. Clearly, when we went and did our initial analysis, the school was not on the Orange County Department of Education's website. It wasn't addressed correctly, or it might have been addressed correctly, but it just didn't include this address because they have several of these operations throughout the county, I'm told. So with that in mind, that we started the review of the application again after we were informed by the district and their legal counsel that the school district would no longer be continuing with their lease. So that's basically the kind of short story of how the school, because it wasn't, we have a process, how the school came and went, so to speak, but the process that for our pre-application process requires a very detailed review of going out around the site, looking around, looking at different websites, checking different sources of information for sensitive uses, And clearly this one was not one that we could see, that doesn't have good signage or anything like that, where we could walk by there. We definitely walked through that center also. But
Right.
again, this was one of those ones where we actually stalled the application, and we're hearing it now because we got clear clarification that the school is going to be gone.
Right, yeah, and I'm sure city staff did its due diligence, and obviously it's impossible to catch everything, especially like you said, with maybe things not being listed very well online or the signage not being adequate. But I guess the final thing I kind of want to maybe wrap my head around is this same paragraph in the staff report I'm referring to mentions that that basically the sensitive land uses in terms of schools, educational centers are ones that are in operation at the time of receipt of a completed cannabis business permit application. So in my mind, that would mean that because city staff received that completed business permit application at the time that that educational facility was in operation, that would then, I guess in my head, logical conclusion is then it can't move forward. Is that an assumption I can draw from this, or?
Well, the answer to that, it would be yes. If it was considered a K through 12 school. We did go through a little bit of analysis, actually detailed analysis, I should say, not a little bit. And we met with the city attorney. We obviously met with the applicant, and we also talked, I reached out to this Department of Education, the Orange County Department of Education, and we discussed different aspects of the operations, the students that they served, which were generally over 18. However, there was a segment that served less than that. They obviously don't have normal operations like a K through 12 school. And instead of really going into a detailed further analysis, once we were told that the school would be leaving, we more or less just left it at that and considered that would be enough to go further with the application. But in short, for your answer, if there was a school similar to this and we found out, we would have probably done the same thing and acted the same way. But at this time, there really isn't a complete conclusion that this is what the council, when they adopted the ordinance of a K through 12 school. So the way it functions is not similar. It doesn't have normal classes, and there's many other aspects of it that doesn't signal it like a normal school.
Right, but if there were minors that were being served, would this then maybe classify as a youth center, or is that another?
That's a completely other definition that would, it would not apply for that.
All right.
But that's a good question.
All right, great. Well, thank you for answering my questions, and I defer back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Brevard. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Commissioner Andrade.
Just along those lines on sensitive use, what about the hours and functionality of the music and the art school that is in the mall right next door?
Commissioner Andrade, tutoring, music lessons, dance classes, children's theater, those are not uses that are considered sensitive uses in our municipal code. So we do not have a minimum separation between those uses and cannabis storefronts.
So children and families visiting these two locations wouldn't be considered, similarly in the same as access to a regular school? Like, can you help me maybe understand the difference between the two?
It's actually specified in our municipal code that tutoring and enrichment classes and things of that nature for children are not a sensitive use.
Commissioner Andrade, any other? Okay.
That's what's on the code, yeah. It's not a sensitive use.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I have a couple questions. Following Commissioner Andrade's observation about one of the adjacent businesses, exactly what business is it? It's a dance art I'm unfamiliar with what she's referring to. And you're welcome to say what it is, Commissioner Andrade, if you know.
Yeah, I don't know the names of the businesses. I was personally shopping around for my own child, but yeah, one is like a art school, and then another is a music school where they're teaching kids just basics of music, how to play instruments, and come in for hours and do arts. They have a beautiful little mural of art display right on the window for people that are walking by in our community can easily see into.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Back to staff. Is the business that Commissioner Andrade is referring to, is that solely for children?
So I don't think we are aware of what that use is. However, I do think specifically, however, I do believe that we could maybe provide some clarification to the commission by mentioning a definition of a youth center. This is the definition that was included with the cannabis business permit. It was adopted recently. It's a very new definition, and it really accepts several certain uses. And I think it's worth a read directly from the code, just to sort of provide the commission some clarification of what we're talking about. And basically what it comes down to is one of the sensitive uses is a youth center. And it describes what a youth center is. And it means any public or private facility that is primarily used to host recreation or social activities for minors, specifically private youth membership organizations or clubs, social services, teenage club facilities, video arcades where 10 or more games or game machines or devices are operated, or similar amusement park facilities. But then it goes on to say, but does not include dance studios, tutoring, martial arts studios, or similar types of uses. So there's been a few of these that we've come up, and we've had to kind of look at these and sort of allow them to not be considered a sensitive use based on that last sentence, which basically excludes many of the retail operations that, although are focused maybe for the use, they were considered retail and a retail component with the original adoption of the code and excluded.
Thank you, Director Dropkin. I'll further the inquiry a little bit. So based on the latter part of that definition of a youth center, I think we can determine what aspects of that adjacent business are not considered a part of a youth center. Have staff already taken a position that the remainder of the uses within that business are not also a part of the definition of a youth center, or may they, or could they be? We know that, for example, tutoring is not one of them, but maybe another offering might be more closely aligned. And have we determined also if it is exclusively a child-serving business?
We definitely made that determination during the pre-application review when they submitted a CBP, which is a requirement to do so.
Okay.
Commissioner Areth, if you're thinking of art steps, they provide a variety of services for children and adults.
And adults, okay. So not just children.
No. And
Okay.
to plug them, it makes a great gift for people of all ages.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Halligan. I'll go ahead and ask maybe one or two other questions, starting with something that Commissioner Vivar was asking earlier about the Orange County Department of Education facility within proximity, which by definition is a sensitive use. And I'm curious to know why we're hearing this item before they've actually vacated that property. And I'll further that by saying that it feels like putting the cart in front of the horse a little bit. So why are we setting a new precedent by hearing an item before that sensitive use has vacated?
Yeah, again, this wasn't a normal course. Clearly, we did our pre-application review. And again, like I mentioned, we checked all the normal resources that we do. And there was no indication that this use was there. It was not operating as it was approved. And there was just enough justification for staff to look into it more in detail and not consider it right off the bat, a normal K through 12 program. Unfortunately, the code does not define K through 12 school explicitly. So we did have to go through a little bit of more research, a lot more research again, like I said again. And
You do a lot of research,
we do
Director.
a lot of research, yes, that's correct. But one of the things we did was really look into what the operations of the program were. And even at this time, I don't believe that they were the intent of what that K through 12 requirement is. But because they were acting with a small percentage of their students that were within that range, we felt it would be necessary to be at least conservative and see more about what was going on. And again, at that time, when we reached out to the Department of Education, and the applicant did also, they mentioned that, you know, the school's going out, and at that point, we felt safe about doing that. The only reason that the condition is in there is just to be like a bumper, just in case.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Director Drapkin. And I'll push it a little bit further, if you don't mind. And Director Lee, City Attorney Preziosi, you're welcome to weigh in as well, if you'd like. Is the decision to hear this item before the vacation of the sensitive use setting a precedent for us for similar items that we might be hearing in the future, such that there are like, for example, if there are applications that are also hinging on some other sensitive use, that we would somehow process those long before the vacating a sensitive use?
Chair Arith, I don't believe this creates a legally binding precedent that would tie the Planning Commission's hands. Each application has to be decided on its own merits. In this particular situation, Assistant Director Drapkin articulated the reasons that staff had gotten to these steps, because this application, its location was not initially on the city's mapping or included in the mapping tool that identified it as a school. Had it initially been identified as a school, this application would not be before you now until such use had completely vacated. So this was in my opinion, a nuanced situation, and really no application is going to create a binding precedent for the city, but specifically this one, I don't believe it would create a binding precedent if you had a similarly situated circumstance, if that application were to insist that they be processed within a certain date or time.
Okay.
And I agree with our city attorney. I think there are some very specific facts here that Assistant Director Drapkin has articulated, and most specifically our conversations with the Department of Education themselves and a direct correspondence indicating their intent with a specific date to close out this facility. So I think in this particular case, that is the information staff relied on.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Director Lee. I think that may be it for now. Colleagues, do you have any other questions? All right. Well, with that, Ms. Halligan, thank you very much. Director Drapkin, Director Lee, City Attorney Preziosi, thank you. Let's go ahead and move to the public hearing. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing and ask the applicant to come up, please. You can go to either podium if you like, ma'am. And if you would, please state your name for the record. Let us know if you've read the staff report and if you agree to the conditions of approval.
My name is Hazelina Belladora, and yes, I have read the staff report, and I agree to all the conditions of approval.
All right. Thank you very much. You're welcome to make your presentation if you'd like. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been quite a journey to get here. I'm here with my team, and I'm actually going to just open the floor for us to introduce ourselves to you so that you can get to know who we are, how we've gotten here. We're not public speakers, so we are a little bit nervous here tonight. So you'll have to forgive us a little bit for that. But thank you. Thank you to the staff. The staff has been working with us for quite a while. We started this process a few years ago. It's been a journey to get here. I am particularly grateful, starting with, I have to say, my mother. A little over 60 years ago, she left a country in Central America to come to the United States so that I, her daughter, can have the opportunities that weren't at her disposal in this country of Costa Rica. And at the young age of 21, I can't imagine going from one country to another country where you don't know the language, you don't know the people, but inspired by love so that you can provide something for someone else. That's quite a tribute, so I'm very grateful for that. Given the resources that were afforded to me in this country, about 35 years ago, I started my very first business as an entrepreneur, and that business was here in the city of Costa Mesa. It was a small travel agency that I had over on 17th Street. And then from that time has moved on, and I want to tell you a little bit about why I ended up in this business, in this specific industry. And it's out of that love for my mother, pain, diabetes, anxiety, depression, the medications that go with treating these symptoms, these diagnoses, these diseases are opioids, narcotics, methamphetamines, medications that are highly addictive and carry very serious side effects, such as constipation, insomnia, and several other things that are very detrimental to people's quality of life. As a daughter, I was desperate to find something for my mother that would provide her a better quality of life and an alternative to these opioids, a natural alternative that can help her. And that's what started us on this path. I started working with pain management physicians, and I learned that pain management physicians, while there is an opioid epidemic, they would actually prefer to recommend a natural product over prescribing or over-prescribing these medications that people with real conditions actually have. And if they could recommend this, they surely would. The issue was there's no standardization in these medications. And when a physician refers or prescribes a medication, even if it's an over-the-counter Tylenol, they expect that medication to be the same today as it is next week, as it is next month. And that standardization just didn't exist in order for them to really refer it as you would prescribe a medication. So then I said, well, how can we actually develop these products, manufacture these products legally so that we can have the standardization? I didn't, just like the 21-year-old lady that left Costa Rica to go start a better life, I didn't know that. I didn't have the capability of doing that. I thought I could, so I tried. And we set out to do a licensed facility, which we did. We started out in Adelanto. Adelanto being the second city in the state of California, second to Desert Hot Springs to actually issue permits. We got a permit there to start cultivation, and so we can start products. We started doing CBD products for patients, treating patients, giving them alternatives, giving them quality of life. Then we also, just a few years back, we applied for a Measure X application here in the city of Costa Mesa, which we just recently are almost up to the CEO portion of it. It's taken quite a while to get there. We have the Adelanto, we have the Measure X, because at all times we've been wanting to comply and develop products and open businesses that comply with every ordinance, whether it's local or state with the Department of Cannabis Control. But it's that inspiration of love and driven by science to develop products for people who have pain, depression, anxiety, PTSD, ADD, so that there's alternative products available to them over the highly addictive opioids, narcotics, and methamphetamines, and providing to them so that they can get it in a legal store. We distinguish ourselves because we literally are manufacturers, and we work with patients. We actually started having patients first, and we back-ended the products that we develop. And tonight, one of my colleagues is actually going to give you a little bit of insight on one of the products. We're going to highlight one of the products that we manufacture and will be made available through our store, which we like to call is almost like the CVS that you can't go to, the Walgreens that you can't go to, the Walmart that you can't go to. You can't get this on Amazon because you can only legally get it within the confines of local and state guidelines that we have to abide by. We have the patients, we have the physician network, and if the patients that come in and they need a medication for their specific diagnosis for something that's not off the shelf, we distinguish ourselves by, well, we'll manufacture that for you, because we will work with your physicians abiding by every HIPAA law and so forth. We don't provide any medical services at the dispensaries, at the facilities, or give medical advice. We are not physicians, but we work with the patient's physicians, or we refer to our network of physicians in order to help them with their specific condition. And if what's off of the shelf isn't appropriate for their condition, we'll manufacture it for them. That's how we started. We started out with Proposition 215. Our corporation, SECC Group Services, is still actually a collective, a not-for-profit, which was established for the purposes of providing medication for the patients. We established SECC Group Holdings as our Measure X partner so that we could open a dispensary here in Costa Mesa, following all the guidelines that are available to us and following them so that we can finally be here today to present to you. This concludes my section of our presentation. It's my pleasure to introduce to you my partner, my colleague, my friend, Dan Hall.
Thank you very much for that very warm welcome and great introduction to our ethos. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. Before I begin my presentation, I'd just like to note that Sean St. Peter will be presenting on some of the more technical aspects of the dispensary. So if you have any questions related to that, to please reserve for his segment. So once vilified as a prohibited drug, cannabis has emerged from the shadows to become a beacon and hope in the field of medicine. This transformative journey is reminiscent to that of coffee. Once condemned in parts of Europe and viewed with skepticism, coffee eventually became the beloved morning routine that we know it today, brightening the days of millions and making the world a little bit more of a productive place. Similarly, cannabis was once only associated with illicit use, and it is now emerging in a new era of medicine, reshaping perceptions, understanding, and revolutionizing existing treatments in the process. My name is Dan Ha, and I'm a co-founder of Canatropic. We are a biotech company innovating a new class of compounds called canatropics. Derived from the words cannabinoids and nootropics, we fuse these two together to enhance the human body and mind. I'd like to share with you today what we're doing on the clinical side with real medical applications and how we're taking this body of knowledge to create an entirely new segment in retail cannabis, personalized cannabis. Our vision is an innovative undertaking that blends conventional cannabis retail with personalized cannabis that is accessible to all. I'll share with you how we've developed our body of knowledge, what we're doing with existing FDA-approved treatments, and how this will affect retail cannabis. C21 Costa Mesa is set to be more than just a traditional dispensary. It will be an access point for personalized cannabis because one size does not fit all. C21 Costa Mesa will not only be infrastructure for our undertakings, but I hope to demonstrate how it will be a local asset to the community at large. Next slide, please. Our slogan is inspired by love, driven by science. What does that mean? In our lives, there are moments that drive us, and then there are moments that redefine us. For us, that starting point was deeply personal. It was love, love for those close to us who are struggling with afflictions such as pain, anxiety, and depression. For example, it started with Hazelina's mom, where she was near her end life, and we set forth to develop a set of pain creams to help her cope in the final days. Personally, I have arthritic thumbs, and I use a formulation that helps me reduce inflammation and improve range of movement. So science became our guiding light, where we seek to uncover the vast potential of cannabinoids, exploring its applications, potencies, and how it affects people of varying ages and conditions. We were the 8th recipient in the state of California to receive a medicinal cannabis license, and our degree of separation has always been our true medicinal approach. Through the years, we've amassed over 5,000 patient records, individually formulating products for each patient, and documenting the process throughout with our own framework, because there was no framework for us to follow. We had to create it. With the help of Dr. Gus Elva, who is present here today in support, we're exploring the potential of cannabinoids to enhance existing FDA treatments for depression. Dr. Gus Elva is a distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric Association, Deputy Director of Clinical Research at the University of California, Irvine, and is principal investigator of an Alzheimer's vaccine currently in human trials conducted in conjunction with Hoag Neurosciences Institute. He is also the principal of ATP Clinical, a treatment center located here in the city of Costa Mesa. You see, inspired by love, driven by science isn't just a slogan, it's our core. It's our ethos. This illuminates our pathway to how we define true medicinal cannabis. And C21 Costa Mesa will serve as an access point for our personalized cannabis solutions where we'll draw from our experience, our clinical work, to create personalized cannabis products available over the counter. Next slide, please. So before I continue further, I would like to demonstrate to you how the endocannabinoid system works to provide a fundamental understanding for the slides that will follow. And I'll tie this all back in with the approval that we're seeking from this commission today. The endocannabinoid system is our body's tool for maintaining homeostasis. Essentially, it's what keeps our internal environment stable and gives us a general feeling of well-being. This system regulates and controls many of our critical body functions, such as learning, emotional processing, sleep, pain control, inflammatory and immune responses, and even eating. It is a system, just like how we have a cardiovascular system, a digestive system, and an immune system. So think about our bodies like a well-tuned orchestra, one that is balanced and in homeostasis. The orchestra is well-tuned, but in real life, we have various factors, internal and external, that affect us. It might be pain, it might be stress, it might be anxiety, and that causes us to become off balance. The orchestra that is normally well-tuned is now playing out of tune, and this is where the endocannabinoid system comes in. When we introduce cannabinoids into our bodies in the right amount and of the right type, it can help stabilize and restore balance, homeostasis, or a well-tuned orchestra. As soon as the cannabinoids have done its job, it simply leaves our system. This is a foregone conclusion, and there's a huge and growing body of scientific literature that supports this. From pain to sleep disorders, mood imbalances to inflammation and many other factors, cannabinoids have the potential to help our bodies find equilibrium. This represents the concept of true medicinal cannabis. Not measured in potency, as California regulation defines it, but it is the what and the how cannabinoids are applied. Next slide. When you experience a headache, you might reach for an ibuprofen or a Tylenol without a second thought. These are accepted, commonplace remedies, uncontested. To date, over 100 cannabinoids have been uncovered and still counting, each with its own set of unique characteristics and potential for therapeutic and medicinal applications. In the future, we might reach for a uniquely balanced THC, CBD, CBC, CBG blend of cannabinoids to help with the same headache. Many take daily supplements to help us feel better. In fact, we've seen in other C21 locations that 40% of their customers don't want to get high. They are shopping for wellness. It's already happening. The narrative is changing, and cannabinoids are so much more than their age-old reputation of simply to just get high. That is what is at stake here today. The consequences, if proven correct, can have a dramatic effect on the population's well-being. C21 Costa Mesa will help realize access to this vision. Next slide, please. So in the next few slides, I'd like to share with what we're doing on the clinical side with patients suffering from treatment-resistant depression, meaning patients that have tried 3 or 4 or more antidepressants and have not had success. We are innovating a new class of compounds that we call canotropics. Derived from the words cannabis and nootropics, we fuse these two together to enhance the human body and mind. For those who are unfamiliar with the term nootropics, nootropics are cognitive enhancing compounds that adapt to our bodies and act to improve memory, attention, learning, and executive functions, especially in cases where these functions are impaired. In fact, many of us might already be taking nootropics without even knowing it. If you consume a vitamin marketed for people over the age of 50, it might contain ginkgo biloba, acetyl-L-carnitine, or L-theanine. These are just some examples. Next slide, please. The product which we've developed for clinical applications for use in conjunction with FDA-approved treatments is Canarol Clinical. Canarol Clinical is a fast-acting oral therapeutic supplement designed to help support mood, cognitive function, combat stress, and alleviate fatigue and anxiety. It works to enhance neurotransmitter function, and we're beginning to demonstrate this quantitatively by using a tool that measures the brain's electrical activity 1,000 times per second. This tool gives us a before and after snapshot of the brain so that we can concretely evidence real change. While Canarol Clinical is not FDA approved, we manufacture this product in an FDA-registered facility following the same strict guidelines as prescription drugs. We're taking our knowledge base here and what we're learning in a clinical setting to create a range of personalized cannabis products that will be available over the counter. It is an entirely new segment of retail cannabis that can help those who seek cannabis for its therapeutic benefits and not necessarily to get high. C21 Costa Mesa is the gateway for individuals to access these products. Next slide, please. I mentioned that we're combining the use of canotropics with existing FDA treatments. We're developing a treatment protocol called Abstract to Clarity. The name encapsulates the journey from an abstract or clouded mindset to one of clarity. The figures on this slide underscores the vast scope of the challenge. The World Health Organization notes that depression affects 264 million people annually, and it is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Additionally, it's crucial to recognize that depression frequently manifests in other conditions, for example, as a symptom of neurodegenerative diseases such as dementia. With over 55 million individuals grappling with dementia worldwide, the burden on our healthcare system reaches a staggering 1.3 trillion with a T. While the products we offer through C21 Costa Mesa may not be used in a clinical setting, but we will approach personalized cannabis with the same scientific rigor. Next slide, please. In a clinical setting, we're conducting research to demonstrate how this abstract declaratory treatment protocol can enhance health outcomes. The abstract declaratory treatment protocol is a three-pronged system encompassing a full spectrum approach. First, Canaral focuses on the neurochemical aspect, enhancing neurotransmitter activity to help the body into a balanced state of homeostasis, a term that we touched on earlier, the balanced orchestra. It is intended to create a more receptive environment in the brain, priming it for treatment. Next, QEEG, neurofeedback, is an innovative technology that not only captures the brain's electrical activity and nuances 1,000 times per second to create a brain map generating a precise set of biomarkers, but it also offers a training regimen. It is akin to giving the brain a gym workout, strengthening its capabilities over time. And lastly, transcranial magnetic stimulation uses targeted magnetic fields in order to stimulate regions of the brain. Think of transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS for short, as a way of giving the brain a gentle jump start in certain regions for the brain to work properly again. This is the work that we're doing in a clinical setting. We seek to take from this body of knowledge to create personalized cannabis solutions that are available over the counter. Next slide, please. So what does some of this data look like? We touched on how QEEG measures the brain's electrical activity and can create a set of biomarkers. This is our NeuroInsight tool. It utilizes a clinical database to compare an individual's brain to one that is optimally normal. And it creates a percentage match. Based on this assessment, it can indicate, but not diagnose, psychiatric disorders such as ADHD, depression, anxiety, and even schizophrenia. It gives us a quantitative measure that we can use to determine the effectiveness of a treatment. In personalized cannabis, we might use a tool like this to help people at an individual level to receive the best cannabis products for them, doing a pre-assessment and a post-assessment to determine improvement. Again, drawing on our experience and understanding of how cannabinoids work. Next slide. Now let's tie all of this together and why it's relevant here today, and how this is more than just another dispensary. We discussed the role of cannabinoids and its wide range of benefits. We looked into the cutting-edge application of canotropics and how it can help existing treatment strategies. Now, let's look at how we might deploy a personalized cannabis solution and why C21 Costa Mesa is such an important access point. It begins with patient intake, a series of assessments. Those results are interpreted for formulation, where we draw from our understanding of cannabis and its cannabinoids to create a formulation data sheet specific to the individual. That formulation data sheet is then manufactured in accordance to California regulations. Just like any other cannabis product on the market today, it gets compliance tested and then distributed to C21 Costa Mesa. The client then enters the dispensary, and in the process similar to that of picking up your prescription at CVS, your identification is verified, then the order is fulfilled and dispensed. As shown here, C21 Costa Mesa is the final step. It is the access point from which these personalized cannabis products will be dispensed. I also want to note that there is an emerging trend of states that have started to reimburse for medicinal cannabis. States like New Mexico's worker comp program reimburses up to $11,000 per year for medicinal cannabis. Having a pharmaceutical-like dispensing platform in place puts us ahead of the curve and poises us to benefit from such changes in the state of California. Next slide, please. Commissioners, members of the public, personalized cannabis is here. We are innovating it. We're combining conventional cannabis retail, which Sean will touch on next, with true medicinal cannabis by the way of personalization. C21 Costa Mesa is distinguished from other applicants this commission has seen, and we believe this will result in a positive influence for the community at large. Commissioners and members of the public, it is now my privilege to introduce my partner, Sean St. Peter, who will share his vast experience in cannabis retail. He brings experience from 11 other dispensary locations in varying stages of development, helping us promise a successful future filled with innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. St. Peter, about how many slides do you have?
I know it's been some time, so my plan is to briefly go through them and highlight some of the, highlight some of the details and be able to answer any questions as we go through as well. So I'll probably take 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Won't take much of your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the commission for having us. We really are excited to be here. So we go to the first slide, please. Next slide. Just some of the agenda item we'll be covering. There's some of the renderings which you've seen before, exterior, interior. Here is our project overview. Like I said, staff has covered a lot of these as well, so I'll just briefly go through them. Project overview, it is a roughly 6,000 square foot facility. We will be investing approximately $1.5 million into this project to bring the site up to city and state standards to improve the ADA accessibility, as well as improve the traffic, landscape, and things of that nature as well. Next slide, please. Leadership experience, you've been introduced to some of my colleagues here, as well as myself and my partner, Tara St. Peter. We've currently have over 20 years of experience in the cannabis industry. We have owned and operated currently at this point 5 existing locations, and we have 6 others currently in construction, poised to open in the next 2 to 3 months. Next slide, please. That's just a reiteration of that. Next slide. Next slide, that's just some of our experience, just reiterating some of our accomplishments. Delivering success is one of our top priorities. We operate to be efficiently, to provide a unique experience for our customers. We allow them to, with multiple retail stations, allow them to get in very quickly, get their products, and which helps us to maximize revenue per square foot, parking, also while minimizing traffic problems. It also allows us to be more efficient and save our consumers funds as well. Next slide, please. This is just a list of some of our existing locations. Like I said, we have a statewide footprint from Southern California all the way to Northern California. Next slide, please. Here's just some guidelines of operational plans. Next slide. Once again, this is our storefront. C20 provides a shopping experience ensuring customers are efficiently and effectively handled while delivering great customer service, great products, and great information, all at affordable cost. Next slide, please. Here's our hours of operation, which I believe staff has already presented to you. Next slide, please. Here's just a breakdown of demographics of, like I said, my colleague explained, of customers served breakdown. And exactly. Next slide, please. Security is a top priority, as well it is for the state of California. We do implement all the requirements for the state of California and the city of Costa Mesa to include surveillance throughout the entire property, which is maintained for 90 days, alarm system, which is professionally monitored, access control to ensure that customers, the personnel is only where it should be. Store layout, we provide a unique layout which allows our customers to get in and out quickly to minimize some of our traffic needs. And we also provide enhanced security, allowing a 24/7 security personnel on site. Next slide, please. Retail access management. This is access to retail area where only limited individuals are allowed, and nobody under the age of 21 is able to enter the facility on site. You'll see a breakdown of the limited access areas as well as where consumers are able to do their shopping experience. Next slide, please. Inventory control is also a top priority for us, as it is for the state of California and Costa Mesa. We will operate in a manner to prevent any diversion of cannabis and comply with all track and trace programs. As an organization, we utilize Proteus 420, a system that adheres to all metric requirements. In the event of any discrepancies to inventory, we know the procedures and protocols to notify the state and deal with those situations. Next slide, please. Storage and waste is also another area that we're very familiar with, operating multiple locations. We have the know-how and experience to deal with proper storage of our cannabis products and also destruction of any waste. This includes prevention of diversion, theft, loss, hazards, nuances, and things of that nature. Next slide, please. Odor control, which I know is a very important topic for a lot of cities and states. We will be improving the HVAC system, and as I think was mentioned before, to make sure that we include odor control systems, the most advanced systems on the market, ensuring that none of our neighbors have any complaints or things of that nature, in a safe and healthy environment for our consumers as well. Next slide, please. Lighting is also very important as it deals with security as well. We will be ensuring that we provide lighting for the exterior, making sure that it is sufficient illumination, as we said before, to the interior and exterior as well, to make sure that we'll make sure that there is reduction of glare, light pollution, to make sure that none of our neighbors are inconvenienced from our operation. Next slide, please. Traffic management, as we said before, we will be improving the entire site to incorporate 27 parking spaces, 2 of those being ADA. We'll also be implementing new driveways to bring those to city standards as well for ADA capabilities. Next slide, please. It is responsible. We could go to the next slide. Labor and employment, C21 enters a market. Their priority is to hire locally from within the community, which we plan to do. We plan to specifically focus on Costa Mesa residents and giving them an opportunity to make a living wage, and also we provide health benefits and things of that nature as well. We also provide lengthy training, ongoing training, and we make sure that all staff is listed on employee register, contained and required, and kept on date with first state guidelines. Next slide, please. Training is a huge important component of how we operate, and making sure that our consumers are given all the correct information and things of that nature. We continue to provide extensive training initially and ongoing training to not only our staff and consumers, as well as our security components as well. Next slide, please. I know outreach has been very important. We have already begun to reach out to outreach to some of the local neighbors and things of that nature, and we will continue to reach out to neighbors and be a good neighbor and get their feedback moving forward. And next slide. And that is what I have for you, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Commissioners, questions, starting with Commissioner Zick.
Thank you. So I think I got my earlier question answered by Dan on the transcranial magnetic stimulation process, except I have a follow-up question regarding that. So I think most of my questions are probably for Dan, but Sean, thank you.
Sure.
You mentioned a lot of work being done in a clinical setting.
Yes.
Which to me says, not at this facility. Am I reading that phraseology correct?
That is correct.
So where is this clinical setting geographically?
It's located in Costa Mesa. We have the principal of ATP Clinical Research here. His facility is also in in Costa Mesa.
What street is that on?
I'm sorry?
What street is that on?
3151 Airway Avenue.
Thank you. I was impressed with your presentation. Well, actually, it started, Hazelina, I was incredibly impressed with your presentation. I was sold when you were done. I thought if half of your team had half of your passion, it would still be a powerhouse team. But then, Dan, you came up, and I was impressed with what you presented. And when we got to the slide of background, I expected to see that you were a medical PhD, but you weren't. You're a venture capitalist, and so I imagine if you were pitching this to me as an investor, A+, and I'm all in. But what I'm wondering about is who does this psychological assessment, the neurological assessment, the neurochemical assessment, and no offense, I'm hoping it's not you.
No, absolutely not. Look, my background is in asset management and investment banking, and my 12 years there, it's largely revolved around being able to identify transformative industries, and certainly, cannabis medicine is one of them. And while I am not a doctor, it is my job as a serial entrepreneur to bring forth and connect top industry experts and leaders to join in a common cause. And to answer your question, it would be the clinicians at ATP Clinical.
Got it. Okay. So if I were to just walk into your store once you opened, would one of the first questions your team would be asking me is, have you been to this, whatever you call, what'd you call it?
ATP.
ATP. Would that be the first thing you'd ask me is, wait a minute, have you been to ATP? Because we don't know what to give you.
Sure, that's a really great question. And this is the concept of blending the conventional cannabis retail with a personalized approach. So a client or a patient that would come in that would seek for a personalized approach, they would then go through the procedures that was outlined on one of my final slides, the patient intake, the formulation, and then the dispensing in a pharmaceutical manner.
Got it. Okay. And then I had just one last question, and it related to slide number 25 of your presentation. And although, Dan, you didn't speak to this, but Sean did, I want to ask you the question.
Sure.
Because as I was listening to you talking about all the sort of the medical benefits and implications of the entire process, I guess in my mind I kept thinking the clientele would be those older people losing their mind, losing memory, having pain, because getting old is a rough hand to be dealt. But then I look at this thing, and it suggests to me that half of your clientele are millenniums. And I don't think of that group as being the group losing their mind and suffering inordinate amount of pain and discomfort. So could you please clarify for me the difference between what you were describing and this being the population? I hope they're not in that bad a shape, this group of millennials.
Sure. So these statistics that are shown on this slide are statistics from Sean's other C21 operations, and these statistics predate anything that we're doing here. Again, I come before you as a pioneer, not a nobleman, so everything that we are setting forth and we're introducing to you today is a first. So in terms of our target market, in terms of the age ranges, it can completely vary. There are those who are in their 20s that really suffer from grappling anxiety. And for example, myself, I'm 40 years old and I have arthritic thumbs that really are restricted in a range of movement. Had I not had the experience and understanding of the formulation of different cannabinoids together and their effect, I wouldn't have full range of motion and be essentially pain-free today.
Okay. Thank you for that. And not to minimize your discomfort, but I'd say less PlayStation and less texting.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Zick. Anyone else? Commissioner Rojas.
Just a basic question. I'm looking at the property owner letter. I don't know if you guys can speak to it or not, but they discuss 3 or 4 tenants and they're moving and the assistance that was being given to them. Do we have any idea of what's happening to those businesses?
Hello, everyone. Sorry for keeping you so late. My name is Nash Salah. I am the landlord of the 1505 Mesa Verde property, the subject for the C21 today. In regards, I can go straight to that, or I can, if you'd like. Okay, I have.
Sure, when you want to. That's fine.
Sorry.
Whatever you want to do, that's fine.
Okay, if you give me a couple of minutes, and I can go through that after that, that would be great. Since it became a green zone area, I've been approached by a lot of people and a lot of companies. They wanted to do this with us, and I felt like a lot of them they were kind of motivated by financial reasons more than anything else. And I was kind of declining a lot of the people that I met with. They always kept on sending me a representative just to come and sit down and talk to me and trying to convince me how much money I'll be making and stuff. And I said, money is not motivation for me at this point. I'm not considering that. That all kind of stopped until Sean came and met with me. And I was kind of the same thing, giving him the, no, I'm not interested in that. And then, see, would you please listen to me? And I found out he was the CEO of the company, which is kind of impressive. He's the first CEO comes to me personally and sit down and talk to me. I really like and enjoy talking to him. He's a great young entrepreneur, very smart, very good. He answered all my questions, and a lot of things when he was talking to me about what do you do different than all the cannabis businesses. He's not just in another cannabis business that he's come there to make money or financial. Obviously, there is always interest in that, but that was, I felt everything when he was talking, he was more motivated or more pushed into explaining how beneficiary that is for a lot of people and a lot of patients that they need that. And it kind of got me my interest in him hearing that, and kind of start asking more questions about this. He got me really intrigued. And one of the things that he said, he was saying, we talked about my mother and stuff like that. And I actually, he doesn't probably know that, but I used his product to try it on my mom to see how she is. My mom was not even, she was not in a walking condition. She was just sitting home all the time. And I started using that stuff. I have to tell you, it changes her life completely. My wife has the same thing, arthritis, and had problem in her neck. I used his stuff, and it doesn't have that THC, whatever that gets you high. His product, a lot of it has a CBD, which is just a calming, great product. The more I heard from him, he came actually 3 times, and he met with me personally. I was really impressed by everything he was saying, and the more I hear from him, the more I was convinced. He was not the biggest company that he came. He was medium-sized company. I have bigger company came in and tried to offer me to lease the place from me. I was not interested. I really start liking Sean and liking what he's all about and what his company is all about. And that's the reason that I actually agreed to lease the building to Sean and Cannabis 21. I believe that what they're doing is different than everybody else. They stand out. They're unique. I really like what they are and what they're all about, and that's why I was really interested in that. And also, I wanted to mention that, as you see, you guys saw the building of the current condition of the building. I think they're going to do a lot of improvement to the building. They're going to make the building look a lot better. And one of the questions that I was always wondering, why there's a lot of people that are approaching me towards this. And obviously, it was the first initial thought that was just maybe because it is financial reasons. But then one of Sean is, works with Sean and partners. He mentioned to me also having a lot of older people in the city of Costa Mesa, and especially literally across the street, we have a big community of senior community. They're going to be a lot of help for them. You do a lot of help for a lot of people, and I think that's probably one of the reasons. The size of the building, it's a big size building. They can do a lot there. The parking is more than what any other cannabis, I think, in the city of Costa Mesa can offer. We have over 27 parking spots. designated and dedicated to his business. We've been suffering a lot. As a landlord, we've been suffering a lot lately from having a lot of drug use people that have been in the back area at this exactly where he's going to have a high security there. There is just, we find a lot of needles and being used on a daily basis. We have signs, no transparent, it's been really difficult to contain that. And we've been calling the police multiple times. I think what they're going to do to the place, they're going to improve it, they're going to make it look good, they're going to bring it back to standard, to all the handicap regulation, everything is, I think they're going to do a lot to the city. I think they will be a beneficiary to the city. I'm fully supporting of Cannabis 21. I'm solely and hardly believe that they are different and unique, and I think they will do a big difference in the city. This is just, my, I'd like to, mention that. And also, my tenants, I have, in order, I had 4 tenants, and now I have only 3. The tenant who actually left last year, he was occupying half of the property. He left last year, and he was asking if he can have a lease. I said, I can't. I have different plans for the place. The current tenants right now, they're aware of the situation. They know since 2017, because I did have before different plans for the building before they came, and I was going to have the whole thing demolished and just make it a bigger Nash Auto business, which is currently I'm adjacent to the building right now. After I talked to Sean and I found out, I told the tenants I can give you 2-year lease because this process takes approximately 2 years. I give them 2 years. I give them the option after that. If they would like to stay, they're paying approximately 50% what normally would people pay rent on that place. And I told them I'll keep them at that rate. I cannot give them any more leases, but I keep them at that rate if they're willing to stay. So until I have my plans and everything will be clear for what we're going to do. And they're fully aware of the situation. I have nothing but a great relationship with them. I told them what were happening. I went personally and I talked to them face to face. I explained to them what we're doing, and they're fully on board. And I said, what can I do? What can we do to make sure that this has been a very smooth transition for you guys? I don't want to cause you any problem. You've been there for years. You've been nothing but a great tenants. And they just, basically they just said, if you can give us 90 days, for us to leave or to find another business, it will be great. That will all we can require from, because they're out on month to month. I can basically give them a 30-day notice. I can let them out there, but that's not what I'm all about. I'm about helping people and making sure that everybody gets. I own a business myself, and I know how devastating that can be in a business. I asked them if that's all they need. They said yes. I asked them if they can write a letter for me to express if that's the case and if they aren't supportive of the new business. Each one of the tenants, honestly, they wrote me a letter, and I did make some copies for all the commissioners. I made like 7 copies here. I talked to I just want to have to mention, I talked to Commissioner Vivar today, and he asked me to bring copies of the letters from my tenants themselves. And I made extra copies for all of you if you'd like to see it. I mean, they're just great letters, and I made extra copies so you can just pass them around. I'm sorry, this is each one of them from different tenants. So I only have 3 tenants left, and we're all in agreement. I actually went above and beyond, and I found some other locations for them in the city of Costa Mesa also. I know landlords on Harbor and Adams, and also on Harbor and Baker. There's a couple of zones there that I think will be good for their business. And I talked to the landlords, and I have emails back and forth and trying to help them out to just make sure that they will be a smooth transition for them. It will be no problem whatsoever. So far, they've been great. I think, we're all having a great relationship, and I think having C21 Plus in City of Costa Mesa, I really, truly believe it's going to bring nothing but a good thing to our city. We need companies like this. We need companies that they think outside of the box, and they really try to help people. Not just money is not the first motivation. Other reasons for that. So that's just my story. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I'm just trying to tell you guys what I feel about the whole thing. If you have any questions, I'm right here, and I can answer it, or Sean.
Thank you for that
You're
very
welcome.
informative question. And that's all I needed to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Rojas. Moving along, Commissioner Vivar.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions. First for Sean, and then a couple for Mr. Nash Salah. So, Sean, you can let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
So the
Nash.
first question, I read something in the staff report that mentioned that Mr. Nash Salah, after careful consideration of your proposal to occupy his building, entered into a lease agreement with you. So what does that mean? Did you sign something with him saying that he'd vacate the building for you and rent it to you, or have you already been paying for to keep the empty space?
We agreed and signed into an option to lease as long as we were successful in obtaining our CUP from the city of Costa Mesa. So up to this point, yes, we have been securing the location for ourselves and with the intent to go into a long-term lease.
But you have not been paying any rent to him or anything like that, right?
Just a nominal fee to secure the location and keep our application going.
Is that a recurring fee or just a one-time fee?
A reoccurring fee.
Okay. Let's see. There was another thing that I was reading your letter that you wrote to us, and I appreciate your letter. And it mentioned something about reaching out to the people of the 55 plus community. And it mentioned that it more or less sounded like you guys either gave in person or in writing in the form of some kind of a leaflet, sort of the type of, I guess, shall we say, presentation or informational package that you kind of gave to us at the beginning of this meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. We've engaged with them a couple of times, yes, through a pamphlet, and I believe we also held a in-person there at their site to answer any of their questions and concerns, and we walked away with them being very pleased with us having them as neighbors.
And did the pamphlet say that you guys were kind of like a coming soon sort of thing, or?
I believe it was a coming soon, exactly right. We just wanted to pre-engage with them and be able to answer any questions prior to our hearing here today.
And was this done in sort of a marketing perspective as well?
I know, like I said, city staff definitely encourages applicants to do the outreach program. So, like I said, we took full advantage. We initially, there's the noticing package. So all of our neighbors are going to be notified anyways. We like to preempt that and get in front of them and tell our story, tell our point of view, and answer any of their questions or concerns.
So there was not marketing?
There was I believe, a pamphlet that we created that we gave out to our neighbors. Exactly right.
Right. Let's see. Gosh, I think there might have been one more question. Yeah, great presentation, by the way. So it seems that based on the presentation that the gentleman before you gave about the medical uses, it sounds like to me I gave the impression that this would be a solely medical retail type of establishment, sort of like a pharmacy, like he was presenting it, but based on the question that my colleague Commissioner Zick asked earlier, it was more like a 50% of your business model would be medical retail, medical cannabis, and the other half would be recreational. Is that correct?
We would be holding both recreational and medical licenses through the state of California. So we have the ability to help both of those consumers. As Dan mentioned, this is a different approach to offering something that's different and new to our consumers. And like I said, teaming with the already pre-existing Measure X, a product that's established and created here in the city of Costa Mesa, I think gives us an edge on that front.
Right. But so what percentage of your customers do you foresee being medical?
Most of our consumers come in under the recreational because it's definitely economically makes more sense for them.
Sure.
But they have all the, we treat them if it's a medical, if they coming for a medical element, then we approach it at that front.
So I guess in regards to your business model for recreational use, would you be selling kind of the packaged products like some of the other dispensaries we've seen here, like gummies and?
Absolutely, yes. We currently carry a couple thousand different SKUs of items.
Sure.
So we would provide all those items, as well as the additional items
Right.
that Dan expressed.
All right, thank you, sir. And
You're
just
welcome.
a couple questions now to Mr. Nash Salah, if I may. Mr. Nash, you can let me know when you're ready.
I am.
Yeah, and thank you for providing these as well to us. And pleasure speaking with you today.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned in your phone call about the 90-day notice that this was asked for by the tenants, and so you said you have not served that 90-day notice to them
Not
at
yet.
this time. Okay. And then regarding the reduced rates, which you said was 50% of the market rate for your area. I guess in the past, I don't know, several years, 3, 4, 5 years, have there been any, or since 2017, because I believe your letter states that in 2017 you began offering them the reduced rates for rent. Have there been any rent increases since then?
The only increase that we made, I believe, was very minimal. Don't forget they're paying way under
Sure.
market value, so I think I increased them by, I want to say by 10%, which is they're paying. They used to pay like I think $1,500, and then they end up paying like $1,700 or something like
Right.
that. It's just like a very
Right.
very minimal, just to kind of cover the inflation and what's happening with the market and taxes and all that.
Sure, of course. And then your letter also mentioned that you were going to be providing some kind of a stipend for them to, I guess, relocate. Have you given them any specific numbers on what they'd be expecting to receive from you for that?
I told them, first of all, I'm actually doing 2 things for them, 3 things actually for them.
Sure.
I told them, number 1, I'll give them the 90 days because that's already a number, that's something that I think is going to help a lot. And second, I'm also helping with with finding another places in the city of Costa Mesa.
Right.
And I did not specifically say a number for them, but I told them if they had to leave earlier, they can. They don't have to be obligated to the 90 days. And furthermore, I said, if you decided to move earlier and you want to stay for one reason or another, I will have no problem giving you guys the last month rent for free to kind of help him out to pay for the deposit for the new place and things like that. So.
All right. Great. Well, and these letters are from a couple months ago, or?
No, they're just recent. They're literally a few days, like less
few days
than,
ago?
Yeah, 3, 4 days ago. They're all very recent. I
All
asked
right.
them to write a letter if that's
Right.
what they want.
Sure.
They said that's all we want. If you
Right.
could just give us the 90 days, that would be great.
All right.
And
Well,
help us with the transition.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Nash. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
That's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Yeah, Commissioner Klepak.
Hey, yeah, thank you. I just had a quick question for Mr. Ha, and I think I had some of the same questions that Commissioner Zick had. When I hear some of the phrasing, like patient intake and transcranial magnetic stimulation and psychological assessments and neurological assessments and neurochemical assessments, that doesn't scream retail sales to me. Is that occurring at the subject property in question?
Absolutely, that's a really great question. That is not occurring at the subject property. That refers to the clinical work that we're doing with ATP Clinical, which is the clinical side. We're looking to draw upon our body of knowledge that we have amassed over the years to essentially create personalized cannabis solutions that will be offered over the counter on the cannabis dispensary side.
Thank you for clarifying.
Of course.
Is that all, Commissioner? Okay. Right. Anyone else? All right. I have a few questions. I appreciate the time that you're giving us to do the examination.
It's my pleasure.
Building off of what some of my colleagues have mentioned, I'd like to ask my own in regards to the clinical arm of this business. Are you planning on using this facility to enroll people into clinical trials at ATP?
No.
You're not?
No.
In what way, if any, are you planning on using this facility to leverage the products that have been put through clinical trials?
We don't have any plans to do that unless someone who goes through our personalized process takes a look at our other services, and typically this is by way of insurance. You know, if they have a form of treatment-resistant depression, and if it is an insurance carrier that is compatible with a clinic, then that is something that we'll look into. But the cross-marketing is not obvious.
Okay. Can you describe the efficacy of the clinical trials as it relates to the products that you offer? Is it the gold standard for clinical trials?
Sure. So success really depends on how you define success, especially when it comes to medical research, right? So, for example, we can quantitatively assess. Let's talk depression for a moment, right? With depression, we can give an assessment, and then there is a depression score. And after completing a treatment, we can conduct another assessment and say, okay, well, was there a reduction? So we're beginning to take it a step further by integrating QEEG, and what that does is.
Well, if I could maybe rephrase it, because I don't want to get too far into the science. Are you using the double-blind method in your clinical trials, such that people are being prescribed placebo and actual product, and then you're deriving a clinical trial out of that standard?
Sure. So the assumption is, are we taking Canarell Clinical, the product that was presented, through clinical trials? Is that the question?
Yeah.
We are currently not in the process of taking it through clinical trials, but the research that we do, yes, the gold standard double blind.
Okay, so by extension, you do not have FDA approval for your product?
Canarell Clinical is not an FDA-approved drug. It is considered a dietary supplement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And it is marketed as such.
Yes, and I just want to add that there is precedence for this, where therapeutic supplements might be used in conjunction with FDA-approved treatments. For example, some might take St. John's wort for mood, or melatonin for sleep, or glucosamine for joint health, ginkgo biloba for cognitive function. So there's precedence for this.
Sure. Yeah, I think it was just, it wasn't to, throw you under the bus per se. It's really just to get down to, is your clinic running clinical trials, and are the products put through the double-blind process such that it garners FDA approval like other, clinical trial prescriptions?
Understood. Okay. Yeah, if we have the capital to do so, that would be a brilliant.
I know it's really expensive.
Yeah.
And very statistics heavy. Sure. Thank you for the answer. I do appreciate that. So by being C21 and having a large portion of your potential clientele being medical patients, is that to imply that you will be turning away people who are, say, under 21 who have a medical license? So I mean, in the state, people who are 18 can seek a medical license and get medical cannabis. But I think in several parts of what I've read, it says that you're really only focused on 21 and over. So are you planning on denying anyone who's under 21, whether it's retail or medical?
In terms of the regulatory.
So currently at our locations, we do typically see 21 and over. We do hold our medical license. So if you are 18 to 20 and you sign up and you have your state medical card, we will allow you to enter the facility and shop as a medical patient as well.
Okay, so C21 is really like for the majority of people, but it's not, it goes lower than that.
Correct, exactly. The state, at one time, they had two separate licenses. Since then, they've combined the two licenses into one license, which allows us to see both recreational and medical consumers.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll move on from that one. Can we go back to the presentation? It was, I couldn't catch the number, but it was the slide before storage and waste. Can we put that up? It was somewhere in there.
Inventory control.
Yeah, inventory control. Okay, what did I see here? So we'll operate according to sell only live immature cannabis plants that are not flowering, purchased from a nursery that holds a valid Type 4 license. So the point I was going to make was, unless I'm mistaken, I think this is the first time that we've heard of any cannabis facility that wanted to carry live plants.
Most probably don't mention it, but most of the facilities do carry considered clones, small, underdeveloped plants. The state license allows any consumer to grow up to 6 plants personally for themselves, so we do provide that to our consumers as well.
Okay. If you don't mind that I ask a side question to our staff, you're welcome to stay up there. Is this the first time we've heard live plants being carried and sold in one of the Q facilities?
Chair Arith, this may be the first time that they've presented that information, but it's very common for cannabis storefronts to sell what's called a clone plant.
Okay.
And it's basically a clipping that then you would be able to use at home to grow your 6 or fewer plants in accordance with the state laws.
Okay. I'm under the impression that the majority of the product that is currently held by our retailers in Costa Mesa is already hermetically sealed, so that odor is typically not an issue. So now that this is just coming to light for me, are there any special considerations on odor that deal specifically with cannabis retailers who carry clones?
So this cannabis retailer is offering MERV 16 filters, which is an extremely high filtration type that's similar to a surgical environment.
Okay, is this filtration relatively different than other cannabis retailers who have hermetically sealed packaging?
Chair Arith, I would have to go back and start comparing their air filtration systems.
It's more academic than
Yeah,
anything,
but this is a MERV 16, so they are proposing an extremely high level of filtration.
All right, thank you. Let's see here, Mr. St. Peter, if you could just stay up there, I want to turn a couple pages to see if I missed anything.
Sure.
I appreciate your patience, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I don't think I see anything else. So unless any of my colleagues have any follow-up questions? No? Okay. Mr. St. Peter, thank you. And to the team, thank you for answering our questions. I appreciate it. All right. I'll now open, you know what? Before I do that, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break before we get to public comments. Okay, we'll see you in about 5 minutes. Welcome back to the Planning Commission meeting of Monday, August 14th, 2023. I call the meeting to order and move on to public comment. So if you're in chambers and wish to speak to this item, you're welcome to come to either podium. You're going to have 3 minutes, and at the 1-minute mark, you're going to hear a chime. After that, we'll move on to Zoom and telephone. So I'll go ahead and start to my right. Ms. Mazzaro, we'll start with you.
Good evening, commissioners, staff, and public. The applicant did a great job with the presentation today and shared with us a few of the benefits of cannabis. But I think I'd like to be able to bring out the balance a little bit and share some concerns. So I'm an educator at the city for over the last 13 years, and I'm honestly becoming a little bit concerned about dispensaries getting closer and closer to schools. So let me share a little bit about some of my concerns, and I'm doing more research on cannabis than I ever care to do. So I'm learning a few things. If what I'm sharing is old news to you, I apologize. So one of my concerns, my question actually when they're doing the presentation is, what is the level of THC in the recreational dose of CBDs that your product has? But what I'm learning is that the THC in recreational dose of marijuana is highly variable, and the lower the THC content in the product, the more the user must consume to produce the desired effect. So really, it doesn't matter how much the level is, because if it's low level, people will just consume more to try to get to that level. So that is a little bit concerning to me. There's reports that says that THC can trigger a relapse in schizophrenic symptoms. So that is not a concern that has brought up in some research. Other possible risks of consuming the product comes in the form of impaired motor skills. It may also impair, it has the same effect as alcohol, if not more in that sense. It says people taking medical marijuana are instructed not to drive until it has been established that they can tolerate and conduct motor tasks. So there's just a few things, whether it's medical use or it's recreational use, there's just more and more concerns that needs to be stated besides all the benefits that has been stating tonight. So I just wanted to make sure that we all hear both sides of the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Missoura. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Barbara Karras-Less. I'm a child of immigrants. I'm a 42-year asset manager myself, and I'm also a 42-year resident of Mesa Verde, a wonderful family community. And we currently have a situation with 2 cannabis locations within a stone's throw of the proposed location. 6,000 square feet, which we don't need. We're satiated. It's a bad look for our community. We have guards hanging out in front. When you have a children's oriented center next door, music school, art steps, staff is primarily for children. You have the Marines that recruit teenagers. You have the karate school, which is primarily a child's-oriented business. You have Sunshine, it's a Sunshine enrichment program for homeschool children, and many more. Escape rooms, children's parties are there. This is a bad look for our community. I'm disappointed that there would be a recommendation for it. This might be a wonderful business, but it doesn't belong in Mesa Verde. We have enough as it is. Your mayor, or my mayor, Stevens, said, hey, it's legal. Well, it's not on the federal level. That's not a good look for us. We have enough for our area. Please, commissioners, consider denying this application and move them elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Mark Less. I own the shopping center next door at 1525 Mesa Verde Drive East. I've owned that center for 32 years. I've done planning myself. I've got 45 spaces on a secondary street, and I'm non-anchored. I've got an old building. I've turned down hundreds of cannabis, massage, tattoo, bars, you name it. Why? Because I grew up in Mesa Verde. I love Mesa Verde. It's a family community. I have nothing against these owners. This business is great business. But if you're going to be planning, you should be planning these adult-type businesses in adult-type areas, not in a neighborhood community. I have a neighborhood center. Now, you talk about this OC Education I had as a tenant. They're there 16 years. They didn't like when they got the notification on this thing, and now they're moving out. Now, I don't know if that's the reason why they're moving out, but I sure as heck can't get another school back in that space. So I'm turning down these objectionable uses left and right, and now they're proliferating all around me. It's a stigma. I have nothing against the cannabis, like I said, nothing against the users, but there's just too much saturation in this. Also, I've had a lot of trouble in the back lot of this center. It's hidden back there. I've had so many, I had to set up cameras that I point there, and I had my security guards look at them. And if you could check with the police, I've had to call the police many times on stuff that's going on back there. It's a great place to hang out by that trash can, shoot drugs, smoke pot, drink beer, whatever. So, in the presentation, they talked about science. Okay, if there was science behind it, it would be FDA approved and you'd get it at my pharmacy. You'd go in with your prescription like a doctor. So they're making a big effort, like this is medicinal reasons, and I don't doubt that there is. And I know people that do it for sleep, different stuff, anxiety, no problem. But it's recreation, it's fun. And when people come for recreation or fun, it's a different look. The music's up, people are partying, they're happy, and it's bad for my business. It's bad for my tenant mix, and I would just hope that we could find another location for these types of uses and maybe rework that code a little bit so these things are not next to residences. I sent a letter, I didn't hear it mentioned, I don't know if you saw my letter or not, but come on, would you guys like to live around the free 6,000 square foot marijuana shops? There's a stigma to it. It draws us, like, let's look at the good cities. Newport Beach doesn't have 1 million pot shops. Huntington Beach doesn't, Laguna Beach doesn't, but I'll tell you what, you go down Harbor to Santa Ana, you'll find plenty of pot shops. And I think we got to start considering that. I think we got to start thinking about, planning in our own tenant mix. How many times yet? My son sent me a long thing here. Pretty much saying most of the things that I said already. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a follow-up questions?
Yes, if you can make it pointed and brief.
Yes. Sir, thank you for your presentation. How long ago did the OCDE facility let you know that they're leaving, and did they give you a reason?
About 30 days ago, they just said they were closing location. I didn't know, but they knew about the cannabis beforehand, and irrespective of the fact. Now, if you can't,
I think, sir, that's all I needed. And the other question is, have you been approached by other tenants of yours about this and whether or not they plan to leave or stay regarding this?
Well, no one said that. A lot of times you got to look at the future. Who's going to come in? They're
Right.
going to drive. This store is 15 feet away from
Right.
my center. Most people think that that's my center.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir. I think we're limited on time, but
Okay.
appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Commissioner Vivar, for the follow-up questions. Is there anyone else in chambers who wishes to speak to this item who has not spoken already? All right, seeing none. Can we move on to Zoom first?
No, there's not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, how about the telephone?
No, there's not.
All right. All right, seeing no other commenters, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the public hearing and turn to commissioners. Do you have any further questions for the applicant? All right, seeing.
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Andrade, if the applicant would like to come back up to the podium, please. Mr. St. Peter, if you'd like. Thank you.
So definitely a very detailed presentation. I learned way more than a lot more about cannabis and canotropics and all of that and how it. So my question is, you kind of did a focus and highlight on how these canotropics support, people of a certain age with varying illnesses and executive functioning. Do you have any data to share about how these kind of products will affect a developing brain of a youth, about say high school, middle school age level? How does it impact their development and executive functioning? Just since you took us down that road, just for our education.
Sure, absolutely. So what the scientific literature shows is that our brain develops into its final form at the age of 25. And what the research also shows is that cannabinoids such as CBG can help promote and improve brain growth. So there is evidence in the scientific literature that supports the use of certain cannabinoids in certain conditions. But in the general sense, the brain reaches its final form at approximately the age of 25.
And maybe this question, are you familiar with any neighboring schools within the location? I mean, I love how you guys are focusing on being a responsible corporate citizen. So how do you foresee to create buffers for neighboring schools? We have a Montessori not too far away. And
Like I said, at this point, we are with the distance that we require to be from any sensitive use at this point. So at this point, that is a non-issue for us right now.
Great. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Andrade. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. St. Peter.
And I just want to clarify one thing earlier also is the clones. I know there was possibly some confusion on that. The clones are only a very small plant. The state only allows us to keep them in a vegetative state. So they are non-flowering plants, which that's what creates the odor and smell. So the clones do not create any additional odor or things of that nature as well.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. You're welcome to sit down, Mr. St. Peter, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any further questions I'm sorry, Mr. St. Peter, if you'd like to come back up and make any other closing comments, you're certainly welcome to.
Only to address some of the comments that were previously made, I wanted to clarify the clones. Also, THC percentages, I know that was a question. They typically range from 10 to 30% on our products. Just because the product is a lower THC does not mean they're going to consume more. It's kind of like alcohol. Some people prefer 5%, some people prefer 10%. So it's very similar to that nature. Also, we do not allow any consumption on site. It is posted and regulated by our security, so there is no consumption on site anywhere. So we do promote them. Take your product home and consume it in a safe environment at your home place. Exactly.
Okay. If I could ask you, maybe just because it came to me right now, based on the adjacent building owner, do you have a roving security plan in place to where your business will or will not have eyes on the greater area?
Absolutely. So not only do our guards monitor the entire site from their interior post, but they also make rounds hourly to make sure there's nothing taking place on the site, to make sure there's no consumption, loitering, things of that nature. Okay. So to make a point, like I said, our goal is to make Mesa Verde a safer place by providing additional security to some of the issues that they're currently having.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Colleagues, do you have any further questions for staff? Commissioner Andrade.
Yeah, just for the record and for the public as well that are chiming in, and probably some people are hearing these applications for the first time, can you confirm the distances of the approved sensitive uses from the location? So schools, again, the distance to the Montessori, which is, I think, just a wrap around the block within 2-minute drive.
Commissioner Andrade, I believe you're talking about some school facilities on Adams Avenue. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so those are well outside of the 1,000 square foot or the 1,000 foot distance. I don't have the exact measurements today, but they are outside of that 1,000 foot minimum.
Thank you.
Is it all, Commissioner? Okay. All right. Anyone else?
I did have a question for the business next door.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, go ahead and ask it.
Was it Mr. Lesguez, the property owner next door? Yeah, I just had a couple of other questions, because one of the things that we need to take into consideration is, that this proposed development it's substantially compatible with the general area and would not be detrimental to other properties within the area. And you mentioned, that sounds like for some time you've been kind of building out your business there to look and feel a certain way. So are there any specific concerns that you have, or I don't know, challenges or limitations in the future development of your business that this would
Okay, the
impact you?
school that left had a provision in their lease that I could not lease to a cannabis use, which I wasn't going to do anyway, so that's why I agreed to it. So now, any other school's going to go in there, it's going to have the same restriction. And now, what about any other kid use? They're going to drive by the cannabis each day and explain to their kids what's going on? I mean, that's why these things need to be, I think, in adult areas.
Correct. So do you have available, aside from that one now vacant location that the DOE just left you, do you have other vacant, I don't know, spots within your mall that you're
Just
kind of
that one
looking
coming
to?
up and a couple offices upstairs. I've been full for a long, long time. And I had periods of time when I had a big vacancy, and I had objectionable uses coming to me left and right. And I made a concrete decision. I don't want those. I want a tenant mix that matches the community. And with that building so close by and a 110, now if I had that building, I'd probably do the same thing. He'd have to worry about a tenant mix. I have to worry about a tenant mix. And he's practically part of mine. I mean, it's 15 feet away.
Right. And are your tenants aware of the business that's coming up?
Yes, they were all sent the mailing, and I sent them an email as well.
Okay. And have you had any feedback from them on how they feel about that operation and how it will affect their business? Any kind of specifics?
Well, I mean, no one knows for sure how it's going to affect their business. But if I was to speak for them all, heck no, they don't want people driving by, cannabis. It's just a stigma. There's nothing wrong with cannabis. Mm-hmm. It's probably safer than drinking. I have no problem with these guys. I've got a great presentation. I know the owner. I've got a great relationship with him. It's just really a stigma. And we got 3 right there, and more are coming. It just seems too much of a concentration. It's going to Costa Mesa. Look, was Costa Mesa going to be weed shop capital of the world? That's not something we want to be known for. It used to be Harbor Boulevard of cars. Now it's going to be Harbor Boulevard of weed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Andrade, and thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right. We'll now close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Anyone like to make a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Vivar. What is your motion, sir?
Yeah, sorry everyone, I'm still jet lagged. I'd like to make the motion that the planning commission deny the proposed cannabis location, PA 23 what's the number, Mr. Chairman?
Just 1 second. 22-05.
22-05. On the finding that the proposed the proposed retail establishment does not satisfactorily meet the condition of not being materially detrimental to the health, welfare, and safety of the community, and after hearing the testimony of the
If you could just keep it to the motion.
yes, that's it. Yes, that's my motion.
Okay,
that
thank
finding.
you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Andrade. You're welcome to speak to your motion, Commissioner Vivar.
Thank you, sir. Based on the public comments that we've heard tonight regarding the nature of the surrounding uses, e.g. the schools and child-oriented businesses that are in this area, that seems to be concentrated in this area. That sort of nature of this area, I think would definitely not be compatible with this proposed use, and it the finding does mention about the yeah, basically, is this going to be harmonious? And I don't know that we've seen sufficient evidence to suggest that, especially with the testimony of nearby property owners. And I think, to me, what especially sticks out to me is the public comment of the property owner sharing that the OCDE facility, after having been there for 16 years, let them know that they're leaving, and within that time frame of having heard of this proposed establishment coming in. So I think that is definitely a factual evidence of this not yet approved establishment already being materially detrimental to a property within the vicinity. So that is my motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Commissioner Andrade?
Yeah, just based on policy LU 3.1, protecting existing residential neighborhoods from encroachment of incompatible and potential disruptive land uses and our activities. I mean, we just heard from the neighboring property owner that has been there just as long. So just doesn't fit.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Zick?
I'd like to make a substitute motion that
If you can clear the board, Anna. Thank you.
staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act per CEQA Guidelines 15301 Class 1 existing facilities, and approve the planning application 22-05 subject to conditions of approval. And I will elaborate on my rationale if I get a second.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Klepak.
So when I first heard about this application at this location, I didn't like it. I didn't like it because I've frequented businesses at this center for years. I frequented businesses at 1525 for years. I live in Mesa Verde and have lived there for 45 years. And I imagined we could get 17,793 people in these chambers that tell us that we should vote down this application. Unfortunately, there were 33,291 residents that voted for retail cannabis. 65% of the city voted for it. City Council put in place an ordinance that prescribed the rules under which these retail businesses could open up in our city. 1,000 feet from sensitive uses. The Renaissance School, a lot more than 1,000 feet. The Montessori School, more than 1,000 feet. 4 cannabis businesses on that corner. They didn't say saturation is a concern. That's not in the ordinance. And our job isn't to set policy. City Council did that. Our job isn't to rewrite the ordinance. The City Council did that. And as much as I'll never be one of your customers, and it's nothing personal, my job isn't to only approve businesses for which I would be a customer. Do I want to live next to a cannabis retail business? No, I don't. And I can understand other people that don't. Would I want to have my business next to your business? Probably not. And maybe that's in 2023, where there's still a stigma associated with cannabis use, and particularly recreational use. Maybe that won't be the case in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But the residents voted, and it was overwhelming. And if you don't like those results and you don't like the rules in the ordinance, there is a way to address that, but it isn't here. This application complies with all of our required findings. Staff has analyzed it. They've made a recommendation for approval, and I don't see any reason to go against that recommendation. I'll say good luck to your business, because good business in Costa Mesa is good for everybody. I'd rather you were selling Rolexes or bicycles or something else, but you're not. But good luck to you. You're a passion business, and I think you have intentions to do good things.
Thank you, Commissioner Zick. Commissioner Klepak.
Yeah, I just echo everything that was said about this being voted on by the residents of the city. And there is also a liquor store right there that's been there for a long time, that people drive by that all the time to go to the shopping center. I know that there is, I saw some public comments about people using the salon that's there. I live in Mesa Verde. I've gone to Live Oak Salon for many years. That's in the neighboring facility. So if the building owner chooses to lease to a different type of business, it is not leaving those residents in that apartment complex bereft of those services. They are available in the neighboring business complex, and the schools that were mentioned are well outside of the requirements.
Thank you, Commissioner Klepak. Would anyone else like to speak to the substitute motion? Vice Chair.
Sure, I'll just state that I am in favor of the substitute motion. I couldn't say it any better than Commissioner Zick did, so I won't try, and it's late. Generally, this is, the ordinance is the ordinance. Our job isn't to reinvent it on a case-by-case basis. It's our job to implement it, and this is a legal business playing by the rules within the parameters that were set by the City Council. Our job, really, my big question, is this going to be a nuisance to the neighbors? And is this different from any of the others that we've been approving? And the answer is no. I know there's problems with a kind of a secluded parking lot. There's going to be security back there. The building's kind of falling apart, is out of code. It's going to get a facelift. It's going to look nicer. It's going to be brought up to code, be more safe, ADA compliant. The number of dispensaries around, I hear that a lot. There's too many. It's just too vague to make it to punish one business on that claim. So yeah, I'm in favor of this. I think it's between two liquor stores, right? The 7-Eleven too. So yeah, whether this is a healthy thing for people that's a fair discussion to have, but I don't think it could affect our decision on the land use right now. But I am in favor of the motion, and I hope my colleagues are as well.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Andrade.
Yeah, I'd like to just really briefly make a comment just in response to some of the statements made. And I completely agree that we're here to pursue what's in the code. We are not here to rewrite it. And yes, the community did vote for this. I probably voted for it as well. But the community voted with the understanding that it was going to be a green zone. And I think what we're seeing now, or what I'm hearing in the community within my constituents, within my PTA network, right? Because I'm also a parent here with a 7-year-old that is thinking about what does the future of Costa Mesa look like for my 7-year-old and all her classmates. They did not intend it for it to be along the boulevards, right? They were thinking, oh, it's the green zones, because that's how it was presented. Now the code is now looking very different than what people voted on. And the reality too is we're well aware of what's happening in City Council, what's happening in commissions and committee meetings, but the general public doesn't. most of the times when I go around and find and inquire to our neighbors about, hey, what are your opinions about what's happening in our community? They don't even know. They don't know what my role is, what it is that we do up here. They don't know the first idea of where to even find the planning commission. Where does it meet? Do you meet in actual city hall? Like, I get these kind of questions, and these are, you know, stand-up citizens in our community, but no one's really entrenched into this work. So I think that's where us as commissioners is our responsibility. Somewhere in here in our responsibilities as a commissioner is to represent our community. And what we're hearing in our community is that they're dissatisfied with how the code has laid out. They may have voted for it, but how the code is coming out and how it's being approved and how it's going to change the future of our community is what I think I'm hearing from our community, parents in our areas are highly concerned about. So which is why I understand we've had, thank you to the staff for all the great background on what this code means, but everything is just so vague in the code. It leaves so much room for interpretation that it seems like it could be applicable in this situation. And again, considering that the definitions of what's sensitive, what's not sensitive, I mean, we put this stuff like right up against homes. It's a non-growing issue. So again, I understand that we're not here to write the code, but the people voted for green zones. And that's not what's happening here. It's right along our boulevards. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Andrade.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a quick comment, if I may.
You know what?
No.
Just 1 second, Commissioner Vivar. I'd like to give Commissioner Rojas an opportunity if you'd like to weigh in on this.
Well, I guess I will. I mean, you know me, I might have a few words or whatnot, but, you know, I'm conflicted a little bit on this, but mainly because of the same concerns, which I consider to be very valid, but of proximity to centers where children are attending, proximity to residential. But I've never made it a secret that I have an issue with the way the code has written, and I think that seems to be the central conversation and topic that we constantly have here. I wish it would have been only written to be included in industrial areas, not commercial zones. I wish it would have been limited to residentials. I wish it would have been something about saturations. I wish there would have been other things about closeness to sober living facilities or treatment facilities. I wish a lot of things, you know, but unfortunately that's not the reality of what we have. And so what we have to do, we're obligated, we're duty bound, because we also have to take into account what Commissioner Andrade was talking about was our responsibility to our fellow citizens of Costa Mesa. But at the same time, Commissioner Zick makes some valid points in the sense that there's the things that we wish we could have. And I say this out loud so that we can be on record here to you in the public, to you watching, that we don't take these decisions lightly. We're very, very serious about what we're doing, and we don't want to be irresponsible. But this is a razor's edge that we're walking. And so we have to find that balance. And for me, my balance on this particular topic is I have to support this application because, as Commissioner Zick said, although I disagree with it in certain areas, it does follow the letter of the law and the regulations that were put out there. So if there are certain ways for people to sit there and voice their concerns, and I too agree with you, Commissioner Andrade, that I had imagined it to be a green zone and that kind of thing. It's not what it's come out to be, but this isn't the place for it. So that's my opinion, and I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rojas. Commissioner Vivar.
Yes, sir. I'll try to be brief. This is probably the 100th time I hear the comments about what the voters voted on this back in 2020 or whenever this was on the ballot. Let's not forget that there was the city's official position was in support of this, and there was effort to have this passed, and so it did. And the language that people read on the ballot was preliminary, and the ordinance was then later went through a rigorous process of going through joint study sessions, planning commission, and city council, but ultimately city council had the final say in how it was written, and so it was And I think something to note for my colleagues up here and for those listening and watching is that many of the public commenters we've had up here, and I have lost count, frankly, have been people who said that they voted for the ordinance, but that the ordinance, the way it's being implemented, was not how they sort of envisioned it to be based on what they read in the text of the ballot. And frankly, I don't remember anyone here who has come up here and said, I voted no on it, and and I'm against this, and I don't want any of this in the city. And so my question is a rhetorical one here, but do we only listen to people at the ballot box, or do we listen to them as well when they are here? Does the voice of the citizens only matter on paper at the ballot box, or does it also matter in voice and in text in these public meetings? And I think we all talk about and want a healthy democracy. And I think in a well-functioning, healthy democracy, the voice of the citizens, the voice of the people is heard at every stage of deliberations of government bodies. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Unless anyone else has follow-up, I think it falls on me. Commissioner Zick.
I agree with almost everything that Commissioner Vivar said. I agree with almost everything that Commissioner Andrade said. I 100% agree with everything that Commissioner Rojas said. The only thing I can hope is that our city council is listening and is responsive.
Thank you, Commissioner Zick. If you'll allow me, I'll go ahead and make the final thought here before we send it on to a vote. I'd like to think that I'm pretty well aligned with what everyone here on the commission said this evening, in the sense that I'll start with the concept of duty and responsibility. We are not the ones, and this is for the public, that if you're watching tonight or you're here in chambers or you end up watching later on YouTube, it is not our job to make policy. That is City Council's responsibility. We are here to uphold the code and the general plan. In a sense, what we do here is to make very dry land use decisions to make sure that what's being proposed in this city conforms, whether we like it or not, whether we voted for Q or not. Our responsibility and duty is to provide consistency to the voters of Costa Mesa to make sure that what we do is something that can be counted on time and time and time again. Is it something, do I make decisions that I don't like? Constantly, because that's my duty and that's my responsibility. That's what I stepped into when I became the at-large planning commissioner a little over 2.5 years ago. I agree with several of my colleagues' sentiments in that there are areas of the code that appear to be problematic in a very practical sense. And yes, it is also my hope, like many of my colleagues here, that City Council would be listening to some of those concerns. But again, it is not our position to provide unsolicited advice in terms of policy guidance to City Council, because they are effectively the people who were voted in. We are appointees of them. And we don't necessarily have to reflect their personal interests or desires. We are independent thinkers as an independent body, so we can derive our own conclusions. But I think the common thread here is that we provide consistency, one way or the other. We provide a level of fairness from treating every application that comes before us with absolute consistency. Everyone is a data point in and of themselves, and that we can continue to deliberate and provide that level of, I think I've said it 5 or 6 times, consistency here. I share in the sentiment that there appear to be, and this is based on similar conversations I've had with constituents all across this city and on a fairly regular basis, that there are areas that need to be, maybe if not changed, they need to at least be considered and debated publicly. So I agree with a lot of you in that sense, while also agreeing that it is not our responsibility to make those decisions. So if or when that time comes that there's a code change, that will be our new data point, and we will continue to provide the consistency that Costa Mesa deserves. So with that said, I am supporting this application. I do not find that there's enough burden of evidence to suggest that there are any modifications that are required. I don't think the burden of proof shows that it should be denied outright. I think that there are generally problematic areas that need to be attended to through time, but we're not gonna rest that on your head. You are not the application that we're gonna, use to do that. It goes beyond you. So with that said, I will be supporting the motion, and let's call the question.
That motion carries 5-2 with Commissioner Andrade and Commissioner Vivar voting no.
All right, thank you, Anna. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. Good luck. Thank you. This brings us to old business, new business. There are neither, so let's go ahead and move on to departmental reports, starting with our famous Mr. Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. For the Public Works report, I'd just like to announce that the Public Works Department hosted a community meeting last Tuesday, August 8th at the Costa Mesa Senior Center to talk about the West 19th Street improvements. We had a very good crowd, members of the community, and also in addition to, maybe I should wait. So members of the communities were out there, and then we discussed with staff regarding many of the improvements that we're about to implement over at West 19th Street. A lot of the comments were well received, and staff is planning to implement a lot of those comments with respect to the improvement of West 19th Street. In addition, Public Works installed accessible pedestrian signals at 6 intersections on West 19th Street. The locations included Placentia Avenue, Pomona Avenue, Meyer Place, Anaheim Avenue, Park Avenue, and Harbor Boulevard, all along West 19th Street. The signals have audible sounds and voice commands to assist pedestrians in crossing signalized intersections, and will do a lot in helping improve safety at these intersections as well. And lastly, as Commissioner Vivar has mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, the Public Works implemented a leading pedestrian interval at Victoria Street and Maple Street. This is continuing efforts to improve pedestrian safety, and the implementation of this device will help increase safety for pedestrians crossing that intersection. So that concludes my report, and I defer back to the chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you, our famous and very patient Mr. Yang. Appreciate it.
I have a quick question, Mr. Yang. When are we going to get a crosswalk on Wilson Street along the park? I don't understand what the delay is there. What's it? Some special equipment?
Wasn't there a temporary one for a while?
There was, I heard. It looked pretty cool.
Well, Commissioner Andrade, that's a conversation that's too long for this meeting. So, but in any case, I'll bring back that comment to our Transportation Services Manager, which we can get back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yang. Director Drapkin and Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. No report this evening.
Okay, thank you. And our City Attorney, Mr. Preziosi.
No report this evening, Chair.
All right, thank you. I will now adjourn the meeting. Have a good night. Thanks for joining us.